I know where you are. 3 words. That was all Preston Vale needed to send at 2:47 in the morning to remind Tessa Rowland that she had never truly escaped him. She stared at those words until her screen went dark, then looked down at the $38.16 in her palm, every cent she had left in the world, and made the only decision a woman with nothing left to lose can make. She walked toward the one place everyone else had already turned down. If this story moves something in you, please subscribe to our channel and follow Tessa's journey all the way to the end. And drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The sign above the gate had been repainted at least 3 times, and you could still read the ghost of older letters bleeding through the newest coat of black, like the yard itself refused to let anything stay buried completely. Iron Meridian Auto Salvage sat on 12 acres of flattened earth at the eastern edge of Callaway County, and the first thing every person noticed when they pulled up to its chain link entrance was not the towers of crushed vehicles stacked 4 high along the southern fence, nor the oil-dark stains spread across the gravel like old bruises, nor the sound, that constant industrial grinding of hydraulic equipment chewing through metal somewhere deep in the property. The first thing every person noticed was the quiet, not the absence of sound, the presence of silence underneath the noise. A deliberate, organized quiet that said, "We see you. We already know why you're here. Whether you stay depends on reasons we haven't told you yet." Tessa Rowland noticed it the moment she stepped out of the rideshare that had cost her $11.40. She couldn't afford reducing her life savings to that precise $38.16 she had already counted twice during the ride. She stood at the entrance for exactly 4 seconds before making herself walk forward because she had learned a long time ago that hesitation at the threshold of something frightening never made the frightening things smaller. It only made you smaller. She was 28 years old. She had a cracked phone screen, the kind where the fracture ran diagonally across the glass like a fault line waiting for the final earthquake. She had a single duffel bag over her left shoulder, clothes chosen for practicality rather than warmth, and a face that most people in better circumstances would describe as pretty in a tired way. Blonde hair pulled back not for style, but because she hadn't had time to think about style in longer than she could cleanly remember. Blue eyes that had learned to go flat and neutral in the presence of strangers, a skill developed not out of coldness, but out of necessity, the way certain animals learn to be still. The job listing had been the last result on the 3rd page of a search she'd run at the public library while her phone charged at the outlet near the periodical shelf. Administrative assistant, Scrapyard operations. Filing data entry, scale office support. No experience required, immediate start. Below that, in small gray text that most applicants probably scrolled past without reading, Iron Meridian Auto Salvage. Callaway County Road 7. She had looked up Iron Meridian before she left the library. The search results had been informative in a specific way. Mostly old county permit filings, 1 business registry entry, 2 form threads she'd found through a secondary search that referenced the yard in ways that suggested it was not, strictly speaking, a place where people without connections went looking for work. 1 thread had said, "Don't bother. Place is run by people who don't want outsiders." Another had said simply, "HA yard. Stay away if you don't know what that means." Tessa knew what it meant. She had applied anyway because $38.16 in a message from Preston Vale that said, "I know where you are," did not leave a person with the luxury of staying away from things that frightened them. The man at the gate did not introduce himself. He was heavy-set mid-40s with a weathered face and the particular posture of someone who had spent a long time outdoors doing physical work and had stopped noticing the weather. He looked at the printed application she held out, looked at her face, looked back at the application. "You're the office girl," he said. Not meanly, just flat. "I applied for the administrative position," Tessa said. "Same thing." He picked up a radio from the hook on the gatepost, said something into it she couldn't fully make out. The squelch was too loud and the transmission too brief. Listen to whatever came back. Put the radio down. "Rafe says bring her through." "Thank you," she said. He looked at her like gratitude was a foreign language he recognized but didn't speak. Then he opened the gate. The walk from the main gate to the scale office took about 3 minutes at a normal pace. Tessa made it last 4.5, not because she was hesitating, but because she was reading. That was the thing about her that most people didn't catch on to. Immediately, she was always reading. Not books, Environments. The way a space was organized told you almost everything about the people who ran it if you knew how to look. What she read at Iron Meridian surprised her. The yard was chaotic on the surface, vehicles in various states of disassembly, parts organized in systems that looked random until you noticed the tags, the color-coded rope markers, the numbered positions staked into the gravel at intervals she estimated at roughly 12 feet. The noise was constant but directional. Every piece of equipment she could hear was positioned in a logical relationship to the others. People moved with purpose. Nobody stood around talking. It was not the chaos she had expected. It was organized aggression, a place that looked dangerous to people who didn't understand it and revealed its logic only to people willing to pay close attention. She was paying very close attention. The scale office was a prefab building set on a concrete pad near the center of the property, its exterior beaten by weather to a color somewhere between gray and brown that she suspected had once been white. The door was open. Before she reached it, a voice came through it that stopped her mid-step. "You're late." She checked her phone. She was 9 minutes early. "I don't think I am," she said. The man who appeared in the doorway was not what she had been mentally preparing for during the walk. She wasn't sure exactly what she had been preparing for, something louder maybe, something that performed as authority more visibly. Rafe Calder was 58 years old, built like someone who had been strong once and had kept the architecture of that strength even as time rearranged the surface details. His hair was gray, pulled back, his beard was trimmed close, his arms crossed over his chest in the doorway were covered from wrist to sleeve edge in tattoos, not the kind people got to be decorative, the kind people got because each one marked something they needed to carry on the outside of their skin. He wore a sleeveless black leather vest with the patch on the back that she had seen in her research and had made herself look at directly rather than look away from. He looked at her the same way the gate man had, flat assessing, not hostile but not warm. "Scale office," he said, stepping back from the door to let her in. "Filing cabinet on the left hasn't been touched properly in 8 months. Scrap tickets are in the boxes on the right. You do data entry?" "Yes." "You know Excel, Ma?" "Yes." "What else?" "Accounts receivable, records management, document compliance, basic bookkeeping." She paused. "I learned fast." Something shifted in his expression. Not much, barely at all. But she caught it, a fractional recalibration, the way a face moves when the information it receives doesn't match the information it expected. "Why do you want this job?" he said. It was the question she had prepared or released, because there was no good answer that was also a true answer, and she had decided somewhere between the library and the gate that she wasn't going to lie to this man if she could avoid it. Not because she was certain he deserved the truth, but because she was tired. Lying took energy she didn't have. "Because I need work," she said, "and because I'm good at it, and because no one else applied." Rafe Calder looked at her for a long moment. Then he uncrossed his arms and moved toward the desk at the far wall. "We'll start with the filing cabinet," he said. "Don't touch anything on the desk. Don't go into the back section of the yard without telling someone. Don't ask questions about things that aren't your business, and you'll know which things those are because they have nothing to do with filing or data entry." He sat down. "You have questions?" "One," she said. "Go ahead." "What happened to the person who had this job before me?" He looked at her again. That same recalibration, faster this time, and she had the sudden impression that Rafe Calder was not a man who was often surprised, and that the fact that she had surprised him twice in the span of 3 minutes was something he had noted and filed away for later consideration. "She quit," he said. "The work wasn't what she expected." What did she expect? Something simpler. He turned back to whatever he had been doing before she arrived. "Go ahead and start." She started. The filing cabinet was worse than 8 months of neglect. It was more accurately described as 8 months of strategic avoidance papers jammed into folders. In the wrong order, folders filed in categories that bore no relationship to their contents. The entire drawer system organized according to a logic that appeared to have been invented by someone who understood neither filing nor logic, but was committed to the performance of both. Tessa pulled the first drawer open, looked at it for about 30 seconds without touching anything, and then began to understand it. Not the chaos, the system underneath the chaos. Because there was one buried, inconsistent, half-collapsed, but present. Someone had started with a real organizational structure and then slowly abandoned it over time, probably as the volume of paperwork increased and the person responsible for maintaining it became overwhelmed. She could see the point of collapse in the drawer, a specific date range about 14 months back, where the organization stopped being intentional and started being reactive. She didn't say any of this out loud. She just started working. The rules she had developed over years of office work, years that Preston had alternately supported and undermined depending on how useful her competence was to his image at any given moment, was that you never announced what you were doing before you did it. You just did it. Announcements invited interference. Results invited acknowledgement, and acknowledgement, when it finally came, was harder to take back than a promise. She worked for 2 hours before anyone spoke to her again. The man who came in for the scale ticket she had been expecting, based on the pattern she'd noticed in the morning log, was shorter than Rafe, broader in the shoulders, with a name tag on his vest that said Dutch in block letters that looked hand-stamped. He looked at her, looked at the filing cabinet, looked at the partially organized stack of scrap tickets on the table beside her, and said, "You actually doing that?" "Yes," she said. "Huh." He handed her the ticket. "Log it under incoming Ferris, separate column from the non-Ferris." "I already found the column structure," she said. "I reorganized the spreadsheet this morning." Dutch looked at the monitor, looked at her, back at the monitor. "Rafe, no, you did that." "He said I could use the computer for data entry," she said. The original spreadsheet was formatted in a way that created duplicates in the reporting. "I corrected the structure. I didn't delete anything. I archived the original version with a timestamp." Dutch was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How long you been here?" 2 hours and 14 minutes. He left without saying anything else. But she noticed, and she noticed everything that he didn't seem unhappy. He seemed in the way that men at Iron Meridian seemed to communicate things sideways rather than directly impressed. She filed the ticket and went back to the cabinet. By noon, she had processed 47 scrap tickets, reorganized the first 2 drawers of the filing cabinet, created a dated archive of the original spreadsheet structure, begun a separate log of what she was privately categorizing as discrepancy, files, papers that didn't match records, that contradicted each other, documentation that appeared to have been filled out after the fact rather than in real time, and eaten the peanut butter sandwich she'd packed from the motel room she was paying for by the day at $29 a night, which meant she had 9 more nights of shelter before her money ran out entirely. She ate at the desk because she didn't know where people went for lunch, and she hadn't asked. Rafe came in at 12:43. He stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at the cabinet drawers, now visibly structurally different from this morning, and then looked at the desk where she sat. "You eat," he said. "Yes." "Where?" "Here." Something crossed his face. She couldn't read it completely. It wasn't pity. She would have recognized pity and flinched from it, but it was adjacent to something human. "There's a break room behind the main garage," he said. "It's not much, but people eat there." "Thank you," she said. "I'll remember that." He moved toward the filing cabinet and opened the second drawer, looked through it for a moment. "This is different," he said. "Yes, I reorganized the category structure to match the digital log. The original physical system and the digital system weren't synchronized. Records were being filed twice under different names and missed in search." "How'd you know what the digital system used?" "I looked at the spreadsheet first thing this morning and reverse engineered the category logic from the existing entries. Then I matched the physical folders to it." Rafe closed the drawer. "How many of these did you find?" he said. He meant the discrepancy files. She wasn't sure how he knew about them. She hadn't told anyone. But she had the feeling Rafe Calder knew about most things that happened in his yard without being told. 14 so far," she said. "I haven't finished the first 2 drawers." "Show me." She showed him. She had created a separate manila folder labeled Review in Pencil, deliberately pencil, not pen, because pencil meant provisional, meant subject to correction, meant I found something, but I'm not making accusations. And inside it, she had arranged the discrepancies in chronological order, with a brief handwritten note on each one explaining the specific nature of the mismatch. Rafe read through 3 of them without expression. Then he said, "Don't tell anyone else about these." "I wasn't going to," she said. He looked at her, direct, the kind of look that tried to assess whether a person meant what they said. "All right," he said finally, and left. The afternoon passed in a rhythm she found genuinely calming, not because the work was easy, but because it was real. Every ticket she processed, every discrepancy she noted, every file she reorganized was a small act of order imposed on chaos. And order was the thing she had been most starved of in the years with Preston. Not safety exactly, though she had been starved of that too. Order, the ability to make something correct and have it stay correct without someone coming along behind you to uncorrect it for reasons of control. At 3:15, her phone buzzed. She had set the notification to silent, but she felt it against her thigh through her jeans pocket. A long buzz, the pattern she had assigned to his number. Because she had not been able to bring herself to delete the contact because deleting it felt like pretending he didn't exist, and she couldn't afford to pretend he didn't exist. She did not look at the phone. She kept working for 30 seconds. Then she took it out, turned away from the door, and read the message. I filed the paperwork. You know which paperwork. The kind that has your name on it in a judge's signature. Come home, Tessa. This is getting embarrassing. She read it twice. Then she put the phone away, took a breath that she made deliberately slow, and for 4 hold. For 4, out for 4, the breathing exercise the counselor had taught her in the 2 sessions she'd managed before Preston found out about them, and the sessions had ended and went back to the filing cabinet. She was on the 3rd drawer when she heard 2 men talking in the yard outside the open window. She wasn't eavesdropping. She simply had good hearing, and the window was open. Don't know where Rafe found her, one voice said. He didn't, said the other voice, Dutch, she thought. She found us. You think she'll last? A pause. She reorganized 2 drawers in 4 hours, Dutch said, and she made the spreadsheet actually work. Vic's been fighting that thing for a year. That's not what I asked. Another pause. Longer. I don't know, Dutch said. She's got something on her. You can tell, but she doesn't shake. That's either brave or stupid. Around here, Dutch said, it's usually both. She lasted the rest of the day. At 5:30, the gate man she had met that morning, whose name she now knew from the sign-in sheet was Garrett, came to the scale office and told her the yard was closing and she could sign out at the front office. She signed out. She picked up her duffel bag from the locker Rafe had wordlessly pointed her toward at 8:15 that morning without explaining what it was for a gesture she had interpreted correctly as an indication that she had somewhere to put her things, which meant she was expected to stay the day. She was almost to the gate when she heard Rafe's voice behind her. Tessa. She stopped, turned. He was standing 10 feet behind her, and for a moment the evening light turned everything between them into the kind of scene that looked significant. From a distance, 2 people stopped in a space that required something to be said. You find more discrepancies in that 3rd drawer, he said. 6 more, she said. I noted them in the folder. He nodded, looked at her for a moment, that same assessing look, but something had shifted in it since this morning. Less testing, more deliberate. It's a long walk to the county road, he said. I know, she said. Garrett can take you to the transit stop. That's not necessary. I didn't say it was necessary, he said. I said Garrett can take you. She understood this for what it was, not an offer and not a question, an arrangement. Thank you, she said. Tomorrow, Rafe said, finish the filing cabinet, then start on the tow records. She started to turn away. Tessa. She turned back. That review folder, he said. Keep building it, quietly. She held his gaze for a moment. What am I building it toward? He looked at her with something that was not quite a warning and not quite a confidence, something in between. Something's coming, he said. Has been for a while. We'll need to be ready. She waited to see if he would say more. He didn't. Okay, she said, and meant it. Blah. That night, back in the motel room with the door chain latched, in a chair wedged under the handle. Old habit, the kind you don't unlearn, even when the immediate danger is in another county. She sat on the edge of the bed and went through what she had found. Not to review it. She'd had a good memory. She didn't need to review it. She went through it because going through it was the only way she knew to test whether what she thought she was seeing was real, or whether exhaustion and fear were bending her perception the way they sometimes did. The discrepancies in the filing cabinet were real. She was certain of that. She had found 20 by the end of the day, 20 documents that didn't match records that contradicted each other, dates that didn't align with the physical evidence logged in the same file. Most of them were small, the kind of small that looked accidental, the kind of small that added up over time to something that was absolutely not accidental. She had also found something else that she hadn't told Rafe about yet, because she wasn't sure what it meant and she needed to be sure before she said anything. In the third drawer in a folder labeled MS Vendor Correspondence, that was mostly junk solicitation letters, expired contracts, some handwritten and notes from vendors she didn't recognize. There was a photocopy of a county inspection report, standard form, dated 8 months ago, signed by an inspector whose name she had read twice to make sure she'd read it correctly. The report had passed Iron Meridian on all counts, which was normal. What was not normal was the fact that there were 3 different versions of the same report in 3 different files, each one slightly different from the others in ways that suggested they had not been copied from the same original, which meant someone had created at least 2 duplicate versions of an official county inspection form, which meant someone somewhere was preparing for a moment when the original form would be challenged. She set her phone face down on the nightstand. Preston's message was still there unread for the second time tonight. She knew what it said. She had it memorized. I filed the paperwork. You know which paperwork. She did know. She had been waiting for it. He had threatened it for 6 months, the motion to have their separation contested on grounds he had constructed carefully, the kind of legal architecture that cost money to build and money to fight money she didn't have. He had been patient about it. Preston Vale was always patient when patience was the sharper instrument. She turned the light off and lay in the dark and thought about the 3 versions of the inspection report and what they meant and what was coming, which Rafe had told her was coming, which she had already guessed was coming before he said it. Then she thought about the $38.16, that was now $26.76 after the motel's nightly rate, and the fact that she had a job tomorrow, and the fact that the win was real, and that she was good at it. She slept. The next morning, she arrived 12 minutes before her listed start time. Garrett let her through the gate without being radioed this time. That was the first sign that something had changed. The second sign was that Dutch was waiting outside the scale office with 2 paper cups of coffee and held one out to her when she was still 15 feet away. "Figured you'd be early," he said. "Thank you," she said. She took the cup. "Rafe wants you to start on the tow records when you're done with the filing cabinet," he said. "Same deal, separate, anything that doesn't match." "I'll start on the tow records first," she said. "The filing cabinet can wait." Dutch raised an eyebrow. "The filing cabinet discrepancies are historical," she said. "They matter, but they're not active. If there are discrepancies in the tow records, they're more recent and more likely to still be in motion." Dutch was quiet for a moment. "In motion? How?" "I don't know yet," she said. "That's why I need to look at them first." He studied her, the same way Rafe had, flat, assessing, recalibrating. "You said you do records management," he said. "Yes." "You do this for a big company before a small one," she said. "But the principles are the same. What happened to the small one?" She took a sip of the coffee. It was bad coffee, strong and slightly burnt, the kind made in an industrial coffee maker that had never been properly cleaned. It was exactly what she needed. "I left," she said. "Family circumstances." Dutch nodded slowly in the way people nodded when they understood that family circumstances was a container for something that wasn't being said, and they were choosing not to push on the container. "Tow records are in a filing room off the back of the scale office," he said. "Keys on the board inside, second hook on the left." She nodded and went to work, and boom. The tow records were not organized. They were not disorganized in the same way the filing cabinet was disorganized, chaotic on the surface, but with a submerged logic. They were disorganized in the way things get when multiple people with different systems have been handling the same documents over time without coordinating. But more than the organizational chaos, what she noticed was the gaps. Not missing files exactly. The files were all there. Every tow record she cross-referenced against the intake log was present in the physical folder system. What was missing was the internal consistency. Records that should have matched each other, the intake log and the scale ticket and the tow authorization form, didn't always match. Not dramatically. Small things. A weight that was off by enough to be meaningful. A date that was 1 day different from what the driver's log said. A vehicle classification that didn't match the physical description in the intake photo stapled to the back of the form. Individually, each one was explainable. Together as a pattern, they told a story. She had been working for an hour and 40 minutes when she sat back, looked at what she'd arranged on the table in front of her, and felt the specific cold clarity that came when her brain had finished processing and arrived at an answer she didn't entirely want to have. Someone had been manipulating the tow records, not randomly, systematically, over a period of at least 11 months. And the pattern of manipulation was consistent enough to suggest a single actor rather than multiple, which meant it was either one person working alone or one person directing the others. She thought about the 3 copies of the county inspection report. She picked up the review folder, and she began adding pages. At 10:47, she heard the sound of a vehicle at the main gate. Not a scrap delivery she'd learned already to distinguish the sound and then voices. 2 of them. One she recognized as Garrett's gatepost monotone. The other was different, clipped, certain. The voice of someone who was accustomed to having his presence matter. She kept working. At 10:52, the scale office door opened. The man who came in was not part of Iron Meridian. She knew this immediately, not from anything dramatic, but from the small signals she had spent a lifetime cataloging. The shoes were wrong for a scrapyard. The jacket was wrong. He carried a clipboard and a bag that had a county seal embossed on the strap, and he stood in the doorway for a moment, scanning the office the way inspectors scan things, looking for the fastest route to a finding. "I'm looking for the operations manager," he said. "He's in the main yard," she said without looking up. "I can radio him." "Do that," the man said. "Tell him Dorian Klein County Compliance Office is here for the records audit." She looked up. He was mid-40s, clean-shaven, with a particular brand of self-assurance that came not from confidence exactly, but from institutional authority, the kind of man who had spent a long time being the person in the room who got to decide what happened next. "Do you have an appointment?" she said. "We don't need appointments for compliance audits," he said. "That's rather the point." "I understand," she said. She picked up the radio. "I'll let Rafe know you're here." Klein moved toward the desk, specifically toward the tow records she'd been working with. She stood up from her chair, without urgency, without obvious intention, and positioned herself between him and the records in a way that could be read as simply moving to use the radio more effectively. "What records are those?" he said. "Tow intake logs," she said. "I'm doing an internal reconciliation." "Reconciliation of what?" "Standard quarterly records review," she said, "ensuring the physical files match the digital records." "Routine." Klein looked at her, at the records, at the review folder. "That folder," he said. "What's in it?" She held his gaze. "Documents under internal review," she said. "Not part of the current filing cycle." She pressed the radio call button. "Rafe," she said. "There's someone from the county compliance office here to see you. Name is Dorian Klein." A pause, then Rafe's voice steady as Riverstone. "On my way." Klein looked at her with the specific expression of a man who had expected to walk into an empty room and found it occupied. "You're new here," he said. "I'm the records manager," she said, and did not break eye contact. For the first time all day, Dorian Klein looked at someone and recalibrated. Rafe came through the door, 90 seconds later, and the room rearranged itself around the weight of 2 men who had been in this moment before, who had history. Tessa didn't yet understand who were reading each other across a space full of records she was only beginning to map. She picked up her pencil. She went back to work, and she listened to every word. Rafe walked into the scale office the way he walked everywhere. No hurry, no announcement, just the particular gravity of a man who had long ago stopped needing to perform authority because authority had simply become the space around him. He looked at Klein. Klein looked at him. Tessa, standing to the left of the desk with her pencil in her hand and her review folder closed on the table beside her, looked at both of them and understood immediately that whatever this was, it was older than her. Whatever Klein represented had been circling Iron Meridian for longer than she had been here, and Rafe had been watching it circle. "Rafe called her," Klein said. Not a question, an identification. The way people said names when they had read them off documents enough times to feel like they already knew the person. "You know who I am," Rafe said. "I do." Klein set his clipboard on the edge of the table, not aggressively, but deliberately, the way a man plants a flag in territory he's asserting. "And you know why I'm here?" "Tell me anyway," Rafe said. Klein opened the top page on his clipboard. "Iron Meridian Auto Salvage has been flagged for a compliance audit under county environmental and commercial operations statutes. Specifically, we're looking at oil disposal records from the past 18 months, tow intake documentation, and weight certifications for incoming metal. We passed our last inspection," Rafe said. "You did," Klein agreed pleasantly. 8 months ago. A lot can change in 8 months. Rafe didn't move, didn't shift his weight, didn't cross his arms, didn't do any of the things people did when they were trying to communicate that they weren't worried. He simply stood there, and his stillness was a kind of answer. "When do you want to start?" Rafe said. "Now," Klein said. "I'll need access to the tow records, the environmental disposal logs, and the weight certifications for incoming metal going back 14 months. There was a pause. Not long, 2, maybe 3 seconds. But in that pause, something moved through the room that Tessa felt without being able to name. A recalibration. A shift in the air. "Tessa," Rafe said without looking at her. "Yes," she said. "Mr. Klein needs records access. Walk him through what we have." She looked at Rafe. He was still looking at Klein, but she caught the side of his face, the jaw, the set of the eye, and she read it the way she'd learned to read the things men said when they couldn't say them directly. He wasn't telling her to cooperate with the inspection. He was telling her something else entirely. He was telling her, "You already know what's in those files. I need you in that room with him." "Of course," she said. She picked up the review folder, tucked it under her arm, and led Dorian Klein into the filing room. The filing room was small and smelled like metal and old paper, and there was a single overhead light that buzzed at a frequency slightly below the threshold of conscious annoyance. Klein set his bag on the small table and began removing things from it: a laptop, a forms packet, a laminated reference sheet of county codes, with the efficiency of a man who did this often and had a system. Tessa set the review folder face down on the far edge of the table. "What would you like to start with?" she said. "Oil disposal," Klein said. "Logs for the past 14 months. Hard copies first, then I'll want to cross-reference with your digital system." She opened the filing cabinet on the left wall, the one she hadn't yet fully processed, which meant it was still in its original state of partial chaos, and began pulling the correct folders. She did this slowly enough to think and fast enough not to look like she was stalling. What she was doing as she pulled the folders was making a decision. She had 20 items in the review folder. 14 of them were directly relevant to what Klein was going to look at. And here was the thing she had been turning over in her mind since she sat back from the tow records an hour ago and understood the pattern. Whoever had been manipulating the records had done it well enough to create confusion, but not well enough to create a consistent confusion. There were seams, places where the manufactured version of events didn't quite meet the real version. If Klein was competent, and he appeared to be, he would find those seams. And when he found them, he would find them in the worst possible framing, because the worst possible framing was the one that looked like Iron Meridian was hiding something, which someone was, just not the people Klein thought. She set the folders on the table. "These are the disposal logs," she said. "I should let you know that I've been conducting an internal records review this week, part of our standard quarterly reconciliation, and I've identified some documentation inconsistencies that we're in the process of resolving." Klein looked up from his laptop. "What kind of inconsistencies?" "Administrative," she said carefully. "Primarily in cross-referencing. The physical logs and the digital system weren't fully synchronized in a specific date range. We're correcting that." "What date range?" "Starting approximately 11 months ago," she said. "The reconciliation is ongoing." Klein's expression didn't change much, but something moved behind his eyes, a quickening, the alertness of a man who had just heard something that confirmed a suspicion he'd arrived with. "I'll need to see your reconciliation documentation," he said. "Of course," she said. "I can prepare a summary." "I'd prefer the working documents." She looked at him. "Some of those are marked internal review," she said. "I'd want to check with Rafe before sharing documents that haven't been finalized." "This is a compliance audit," Klein said. "You're required to provide requested documentation." "I understand that," she said, "and I will. I just want to make sure I'm providing the correct documents in the correct context, so there's no misunderstanding about what's a finalized record and what's a working note." She paused. "I'm sure you'd prefer accuracy over speed." Klein looked at her for a moment. She kept her expression neutral, cooperative, helpful. The expression of someone trying to do this right. "Fine," he said. "We'll start with what you have available." She opened the first disposal log folder, and for the next 40 minutes, she walked Dorian Klein through 14 months of oil disposal records, explaining each entry, cross-referencing each date, answering each question with the precise, unhurried patience of someone who understood the material completely and was not afraid of scrutiny. because she did understand it. She had spent the better part of 2 days building that understanding from scratch. And the thing about understanding something from scratch was that you understood it differently than someone who had grown up inside it. You understood the seams. You understood where the pieces fit and where they didn't. And she guided Klein carefully away from the seams she didn't want him to reach yet. Not because she was protecting the manipulation, she wasn't. She was protecting the sequence. If Klein found the inconsistencies in the wrong order, without context, without the framing that explained what they actually meant, he would arrive at the wrong conclusion. And the wrong conclusion applied with county authority and a clipboard was a weapon. She needed him to find the right things, in the right order. By 11:45, Klein had filled 2 pages of his legal pad with notes. He set his pen down and looked at her. "You've been here how long?" he said. "This is my 3rd day," she said. He was quiet for a moment. "And you've already conducted a full records review." "Partial," she said. "I'm thorough." "Apparently." He tapped his pen against his pad. "Ms. Rowland, I'm going to be direct with you. Please. This yard has been flagged 3 times in the past 2 years for documentation irregularities. Not violations, the documentation has always cleared on close review. But the pattern of irregularities is consistent enough that my office has reason to believe there's something systematic happening here." She kept her face still. "What kind of systematic?" she said. "Weight misclassification," he said. "Specifically incoming metal being classified at a lower grade than it actually is, which affects the environmental compliance calculation and also, incidentally, affects the county's licensing fee structure." He paused. "Someone at this yard has been filing documentation that systematically undervalues incoming material." She waited. "That's a serious allegation," she said. "It's not an allegation yet," he said. "It's a pattern. The allegation would require documentation." He looked at her directly. "Which is why I'm here." She held his gaze for 3 full seconds. Then she said, "I think I can help you with that." Klein went very still. "How?" he said. "The records I've been reviewing," she said. "The inconsistencies I mentioned. I think they're related to what you're describing, but the picture is more complicated than what you've outlined so far, and if you pursue it the way you're currently framing it, you're going to find evidence that looks like Iron Meridian is responsible for the misclassification, and I don't think Iron Meridian is responsible." "Then who is all?" She picked up the review folder, set it on the table in front of him, still face down. "I'm not ready to say that yet," she said, "because I'm not certain. And if I'm not certain, I don't say it." Klein stared at the folder. "What's in there?" he said. 20 documents, she said. 14 of them are relevant to what you're looking for. The other 6 are relevant to something I haven't finished mapping yet." "Miss Rowland, give me until end of week," she said. "I'll have a complete reconciliation document, cross-reference sourced with the original and corrected versions of every discrepancy. If you execute this audit based on what you have right now, you will make a significant mistake. If you wait 4 days, you'll have something that actually holds up." The room was quiet except for the buzzing light. Klein looked at her for a long time. "Why would you do that?" he said. "Help a county compliance officer build a case." "I'm not building your case," she said. "I'm building an accurate record. What you do with it is your business." He picked up his legal pad, looked at his notes, set it back down. 4 days, he said. 4 days, she said. He closed his laptop, began packing his bag. At the door, he stopped. "You said the inconsistency started approximately 11 months ago," he said. "That's correct." "Who was managing records 11 months ago?" She met his eyes. "That she said is one of the things I'm still mapping." Klein nodded once slowly and left. She stood in the filing room for a moment after his footsteps faded. Then she opened the review folder, looked at the 20 documents arranged in chronological order, and added a 21st, the note she wrote right now in pencil, recording the date, the time, and the substance of the conversations she had just had with Dorian Klein, because everything that happened from this point forward needed to be documented, and she was not going to be the person who forgot that. She walked back to the scale office. Rafe was there standing at the window watching Klein's county vehicle pull toward the gate. He didn't turn around when she came in. "He's coming back," she said. "I know," Rafe said. "He has a theory about weight misclassification. He's wrong about who's responsible, but he has enough of the pattern to cause serious damage if he moves on it before I finish the reconciliation." Now Rafe turned. You told him to wait, he said. It was not a question. I told him 4 days. Something moved across Rafe's face that she couldn't immediately categorize. Not anger, not relief, not surprise. Something older than any of those. You didn't have to do that, he said. I know, she said. You could have let him do what he came to do. It's not your yard. She looked at him steadily. The records are wrong, she said. I don't leave records wrong if I can fix them. It has nothing to do with whose yard it is. Rafe was quiet for a long moment. What do you need, he said. Access to the environmental disposal logs going back 18 months, she said. The vendor contracts for the tow operators. And whoever managed intake documentation from 14 months ago to 3 months ago, I need to know their name. Rafe's jaw shifted. Why 3 months ago, he said. Because the pattern stops 3 months ago, she said. Whatever was happening, it stopped. Either the person stopped or they were stopped. Either way, that's the boundary of the manipulation. After that, the records clean up. Rafe looked at the window again. The county vehicle was gone. The person who managed intake 3 months ago, he said carefully, left the yard in April. Was he fired? A pause. Let go, Rafe said. We had reason. Couldn't prove it at the time. He looked at her. Your 20 documents might be the proof. The weight of that landed between them, not dramatic, not loud, but heavy in the way real things were heavy when they stopped being theoretical and became actionable. Then I need everything connected to him, she said. Every form he touched, every record he filed. That's going to be a lot of paper, Rafe said. Good, she said. I work well with paper. He almost smiled. She caught it at the edge of his mouth, the very beginning of something that didn't fully form, but was real for the half second it existed. I'll get Dutch to pull the storage files, he said. Thank you. She was halfway back to the filing room when her phone buzzed. Long. His pattern. She stopped. Took it out. Read it. The judge signed it this morning. You have 14 days to respond or it defaults. Come home, Tessa. Stop making this harder than it has to be. She put the phone away. She went back to work. The storage files Dutch brought were 3 banker's boxes, dusty, sealed with clear tape that had yellowed at the edges. He set them on the table in the filing room without ceremony and stood in the doorway looking at them. These are from Marcus, he said. The name landed flat the way names did when they carried things people had decided not to say out loud. Marcus managed intake, she said. Marcus managed whatever Marcus felt like managing, Dutch said. That was the problem. Was he the only one with access to the weight certifications? Dutch's expression shifted. Him and Vic, but Vic's been here 12 years. His records are clean going back to the beginning. I'll still need to cross-reference, she said. You think Vic? I don't think anything yet, she said. I cross-reference everyone. That's how reconciliation works. If Vic's records are clean, the cross-reference will show that, and it'll actually make your case stronger. She paused. It's not about suspicion. It's about documentation. Dutch nodded slowly. Rafe said you were thorough. He said that this morning, she said. He's known me for 2.5 days. Rafe doesn't say things he doesn't mean, Dutch said. He doesn't say much of anything he doesn't mean. You get used to it. She looked at the 3 boxes. Dutch, she said. Yeah. How long has Klein been coming around? Dutch leaned in the doorway. On and off about a year. Same song, documentation, irregularities, pattern of concern. Maybe we should take a closer look. But he's never had enough to actually move on us. He paused. Until now, maybe. He still doesn't have enough, she said. Not if I do this right. Dutch looked at her. Not with the flatness she'd gotten from the men at Iron Meridian, with something more direct, more frank, the look of someone who had decided to say the thing he'd been deciding about. Why are you doing this, he said, for real? Not the records, wrong and I fixed them answer. The real answer. She pulled the tape off the first banker's box. Because I spent 6 years watching someone use paperwork as a weapon, she said. Contracts and documents and legal filings that looked legitimate and weren't. I watched that dismantle things that shouldn't have been dismantled, and I couldn't stop it because I didn't understand it fast enough. She lifted the lid. I understand this, and I can stop it, so I am. Dutch was quiet for a moment. Your ex, he said, not asking, placing. She didn't answer directly. The filing is in my review folder. The structural manipulation, it's the same pattern. Someone who knows how to make wrong documents look right to people who don't look closely enough. She picked up the first folder from the box. I looked closely. Dutch pushed off the door frame. I'll bring you coffee, he said. The good stuff. Rafe's personal stash. He won't notice. She almost laughed. Something about the matter-of-factness of it, the complete pivot from emotional disclosure to coffee logistics, cut through the tightness in her chest in a way that nothing else had all day. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me, he said. Just find what Klein's going to find before Klein finds it. He left. She opened the folder. Marcus had been thorough, too, in the opposite direction. Where she built accuracy, he had built confusion. Every discrepancy she'd found in the filing cabinet, every mismatched record in the tow logs, every slightly off weight certification traced back eventually to a document that Marcus had either created or modified. She could see his methodology now that she had his original files, the way he'd introduced small errors that individually looked like clerical mistakes and collectively formed a systematic misclassification. The county was right about the pattern. They had just been wrong about the direction. The misclassification wasn't to benefit Iron Meridian. It was to damage it. She sat back. This was the twist she had not expected. Not fraud for profit, fraud for destruction. Someone had placed Marcus here, or Marcus had come here on his own agenda to build a paper trail that would eventually collapse the yard under county scrutiny. Every misfiled record, every wrong weight, every inconsistency was a brick in a wall designed to fall on Iron Meridian when someone finally looked hard enough. And Klein had been looking for a year. She picked up her pencil and started writing. She wrote for 2 hours, not notes, a full reconstruction. Every document in the box is cross-referenced against every document she'd already reviewed, assembled in chronological sequence, the pattern of manipulation laid out explicitly with the original correct documentation placed beside its manipulated counterpart. She wrote in clear, plain language, no jargon, no legal flourish, just the facts in the order they happened and what they meant. By 4 o'clock, she had 38 pages. She set her pencil down and stretched her hands, which ached from writing at a pace she hadn't sustained since her first year of graduate school, the year before Preston had begun the slow, patient process of making her smaller. Rafe appeared in the doorway. He looked at the 38 pages. Talk to me, he said. She talked to him. She went through it quickly and without softening anything, because Rafe Calder was not a man who needed things softened, and because she had the feeling he already knew most of it and had been waiting for someone to arrange it in a form that was usable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Marcus was sent, he said. Finally, it wasn't opportunistic. I think so, she said. The pattern is too deliberate for someone who was just skimming, and the target of the manipulation is always Iron Meridian, specifically not individual records, not individual transactions. Every discrepancy points back to the yard as a whole. Someone wanted us shut down, Rafe said. Or wanted you legally vulnerable, she said. Shutdown is one option, but leverage is another. If someone can threaten you with county action at will, waive the documentation irregularities whenever they want compliance, that's worth more than shutdown. Rafe's expression went somewhere she couldn't entirely follow, somewhere private and cold. I know who that is, he said. She waited. He didn't say the name, but she saw it in his jaw, in the stillness that went even stiller for a moment, in the breath he took and controlled. Is it something I need to know, she said. Not yet, he said. Finish the reconciliation. Get it watertight. He looked at the 38 pages. All of it, every document, sourced and dated. 4 days, she said. Can you do it in 3? She looked at the bunk, at the 38 pages, at the review folder with its 21 entries. Yes, she said. He nodded and moved toward the door. Rafe, she said. He stopped. The person you're thinking of, she said. Are they the reason Klein keeps coming back? Did someone tell Klein where to look? He turned. His face was unreadable in the way faces were unreadable when they were working very hard. Yeah, he said. Then Klein isn't the problem, she said. He's the instrument. Rafe looked at her for a long moment. Now you understand the yard, he said. He left. She turned back to the boxes. Her phone buzzed. She didn't take it out. She picked up her pencil and went back to work, and the evening came through the single small window of the filing room and turned the paper gold and then gray, and she kept writing because the 38 pages were not enough. And she knew it, and she had promised 3 days, and she kept her promises. Now, the way she kept them in the years before Preston taught her that promises could be used against you. She was unlearning that particular lesson one day at a time, and today the unlearning looked like 38 pages and growing. At 5:58, Dutch knocked on the doorframe. "Yard's closing," he said. "I know," she said. "5 more minutes. Garrett'll take you to the transit stop." "Thank you." He looked at the pages spread across the table, at the boxes, at her. "You eat today," he said. She thought about it. "Lunch," she said. "That's not enough," he said flatly. "There's food at the break room. Somebody always leaves something." "I'll eat at the motel," she said. "Motel," he said. The word landed with a particular weight, the weight of a man who had just connected something he should have connected before. He didn't say anything else about it. 5 minutes, she said again. 4:59, he said, and walked away. She finished the page she was writing, gathered the documents back into their organized stacks, wrote the date and time on the cover note of the reconciliation document. 39 pages now. She was almost to the door when she saw it. She had almost missed it. It was at the bottom of the third banker's box, underneath a sheaf of blank forms that Marcus had apparently used as packing material, a single envelope unsealed containing a single sheet of paper. Not a county form, not a vendor document, a personal note, handwritten. She read it. Her hand went still. The note was brief, 7 lines, but the last line was the one that stopped everything, her breath, her movement, the careful, controlled function she had maintained all day. The last line said, "When the time comes, make sure the woman in the office can't testify. She'll know too much." The date at the top of the note was 3 months ago. 3 months ago, she had been in another county, entirely married to Preston Vale, not yet aware that Iron Meridian existed. She read the line again. The woman in the office, not her name, not her face, just the role, the position. Whoever sat in this chair in this room with access to these records, that person was a threat to someone, and someone had told Marcus to make sure that threat was neutralized. She had walked into this job not knowing she was walking into a target. She held the note carefully by its edges, set it on top of the organized stack, added it to the review folder as document 22, wrote the date, the time, and a single line of annotation found at bottom of Marcus's storage files. Handwritten, no signature, author unknown. Then she picked up her duffel bag, and she walked out to where Garrett was waiting to take her to the transit stop, and she kept her face exactly as calm as it had been all day, because the thing Preston had taught her without meaning to, the thing she was grateful for, in the way you were grateful for skills learned in survival, was how to keep walking when the ground had just shifted under your feet. She kept walking. She didn't sleep. Not because of Preston's messages she had learned over 6 years to sleep through those, the way people who lived near train tracks learned to sleep through freight. It was the note. The 7 lines, the last one in particular, which had followed her from the filing room to Garrett's truck, to the transit stop, to the motel room where it sat in the review folder on the nightstand and pulsed like something with a heartbeat. When the time comes, make sure the woman in the office can't testify. She'll know too much. She lay on the motel bed with the lights on and went through the logic of it, the way she went through records methodically without allowing herself to skip steps, because a step felt uncomfortable. Fact, the note was written 3 months ago. Fact, 3 months ago, she was not at Iron Meridian. She had not yet applied. She had not yet known the yard existed. Fact, the note referred to a role, not a person, which meant whoever wrote it had been planning for a specific sequence of events. Marcus leaves or is removed, and at some point, someone fills the office position. That someone, by the nature of the job, would eventually see what Marcus had built. And whoever wrote the note had already decided what to do about that person before that person existed. She was not the target. The position was the target. She was simply the person who had arrived and sat down in the chair. It should have made her feel better. It didn't, because the person who wrote that note had not stopped their planning when Marcus left. They had continued, but they were continuing it now, which meant at some point at the time of their choosing, they would activate whatever came after the note. At 2 in the morning, she got up, sat at the small desk, and opened her laptop, the one she hadn't mentioned to anyone at Iron Meridian, because it was her private machine, not connected to the yard system. She opened a blank document and began typing. Not the reconciliation. She had been building the reconciliation on paper because paper was harder to access remotely, and she was cautious. What she typed now was a summary, A clean, structured account of everything she had found, everything she suspected, and everything she could document. She wrote it for an audience she hadn't identified yet. She wrote it the way she would write anything important, assuming the reader knew nothing, and structuring it so that a person who knew nothing could follow it to the same conclusion she had reached. She saved it in 3 places. Then she went back to bed and stared at the ceiling until the alarm went off at 5:45. She arrived at Iron Meridian at 7:12, which was 53 minutes before her listed start time. The gate was already open. Garrett was there, but so was someone she hadn't seen before, a younger man, maybe 30, heavy-set with a watchfulness about him that she recognized as deliberate rather than natural. He was standing at the interior side of the gate, and he looked at her when she came through with the specific attention of someone who had been told to look at her. "You're early," he said. "I know," she said. "Rafe said you would be." He stepped aside. "He wants to see you before you start." Main garage. She had never been to the main garage. Rafe had said on her first day not to go into the back section without telling someone, and she had respected that boundary because it was reasonable and because she wasn't there to collect information she hadn't been invited to collect. But the young man walked her there now through the yard in the early morning gray, past the equipment in the stacked vehicles and the oil drums, to a structure at the rear of the property that was larger than it looked from the front. Rafe was inside standing at a workbench with Dutch and a third man she didn't know, older than Dutch, with the build of someone who had done heavy work for 40 years and carried it in his shoulders. The 3 of them were looking at something on the workbench. They stopped when she came in. "Close it," Rafe said to the young man who'd walked her. The door closed. "You found something last night," Rafe said. Not a question. "You knew about the note," she said. Also not a question. She had thought about this on the transit ride in, had arrived at it during the 4th or 5th time she reviewed the sequence. Rafe had told her to build the review folder quietly. He had told her something was coming. He had looked at the 3 bankers' boxes from Marcus with an expression that was not discovery, it was confirmation. He had known there was something in those boxes. He had been waiting for someone to find it. "I knew there was something," he said. "I didn't know what specifically." "You let me find it." "You were going to find it anyway," he said. "That's why I hired you." She held that for a moment. "You didn't hire me because I was the only applicant," she said. "You were the only applicant," he said. "That part was true, but I would have found a reason not to hire you if you hadn't been the right person." He looked at her steadily. "The way you walked in, the way you talked, the way you looked at the filing cabinet, not at the mess, at the structure underneath it. I needed someone who could do that and who had enough of their own reasons to stay quiet about what they found." "Enough of my own reasons," she said. "You mean Preston." The name dropped into the room and nobody reacted to it, which meant Rafe had already told them, which meant he had done research she hadn't authorized, and she should have been angrier about that than she was. "You're running from something," Rafe said. "I'm not judging that. I've known people who run, the ones who run towards something useful, those people I trust." "You looked into me," she said. "I looked at you," he said. "The application, the references. Enough to know you weren't a plant." He paused. "You understand why that matters." She did. Marcus had been a plant. The next person in the office might have been a plant. The fact that she was genuinely in flight from something real, that she had arrived at Iron Meridian because she was desperate, not because she was sent, was exactly the thing that made her trustworthy in Rafe's calculus. You couldn't fake the kind of desperation she'd arrived with. He'd known that on day 1. "What's in the note?" Dutch said. She told him all 7 lines verbatim because she had memorized it the way she memorized things that mattered. The room was quiet when she finished. The older man at the workbench, the one she didn't know, said, "He's moving faster than we thought." "He," she said. "You know who wrote it?" Rafe looked at the older man. Something passed between them. "His name is Garrett Bulmarico," Rafe said. "Not our Garrett, different man, different county. He runs a competing salvage operation 2 counties over. He's been trying to get Iron Meridian's operating license pulled for 3 years." He paused. "Marcus worked for him before he came to us." "Marcus was Saul's man from the beginning," she said. "We believe so. And now Saul knows Marcus is gone, the records are sitting there, and someone in my position is going to eventually put it all together." She thought for a moment. "So the note was written as an instruction, in case the records were found before Saul could move on them. In case someone like you showed up," Dutch said. What does can't testify mean in this context, she said. Does he mean legally as in neutralize the person as a witness before any formal proceeding? Or does he mean something else? The room answered her question, not with words, but with silence, the particular silence of men who had considered the range of meanings and were choosing which one to name. Both, Rafe said, depending on how much time he has. She nodded. She was not surprised. She was not afraid exactly. She had been afraid of Preston for 6 years, and fear at that duration either destroyed you or it became something you metabolized, something your body processed the way it processed oxygen, necessary and constant and no longer remarkable. Klein comes back in 3 days, she said. I told him I'd have the reconciliation complete. Klein isn't the problem, Rafe said. I know. You told me he's the instrument. But if I hand Klein a complete sourced reconciliation that demonstrates the manipulation originated with Marcus and traces to Saul, Klein becomes your instrument instead of his. She looked at Rafe. That's what you want. You want Klein to take the documentation to the county with Iron Meridian's name on the correct side of it. Rafe was quiet for a moment. Can you build that? He said. I already have 39 pages, she said. I need 2 more days and access to the vendor contracts. And I need the name of anyone else Marcus interacted with regularly. Vendors, drivers, county contacts. Anyone who could have been feeding Saul information about when the records were being reviewed. The older man shifted at the workbench. That's going to open some doors we've kept closed. Then keep them closed, she said. But understand that if you do the reconciliation, we'll have gaps. And gaps are what Klein has been using against you for a year. The older man looked at Rafe. Rafe said, open them. She started that morning with the vendor contracts. Rafe had them brought to the filing room, not by Dutch this time, but by the young man from the gate, whose name she learned was Cody, and who set the contracts on the table with a carefulness that suggested he'd been told specifically to be careful with them. You need anything else? Cody said. Not right now, she said, but stay close to the yard today. He looked at her. Why? Because if Saul knows the records are being reviewed and he's already written instructions about the person doing the reviewing, he's probably monitoring the yard. She said it the same way she said everything factually without drama. I'd rather have more people around than fewer. Cody went very still for a moment. Then he said, I'll tell Rafe. He already knows, she said, but tell him I said it out loud so he knows I know. Cody left. She opened the first vendor contract. The vendor contracts were cleaner than the scrap records. Marcus had been careful here, either because he didn't expect anyone to cross-reference them or because the manipulation in this layer was more subtle. But it was there. 3 vendors in particular appeared in both the vendor contracts and the tow intake logs with frequency patterns that were statistically improbable. They showed up exactly when the weight discrepancies were highest and disappeared from the watch in the 3 months before Marcus left, which was exactly when the discrepancies began to decrease. She wrote all of this down, sourced every statement, cross-referenced every date, built the narrative the way you built anything that had to be bulletproof from the foundation up, not from the conclusion down. At 10:30, her phone buzzed. She took it out. It was not Preston. It was a number she didn't recognize. No area code she could immediately place. The message said, you should stop what you're doing. This is friendly advice. She read it twice, set the phone face up on the table, took a photo of the screen with her laptop's camera, added the timestamp and the message content to her summary document. Then she picked up her pencil and kept working. At 10:47, it buzzed again. Same number, last chance to walk away clean. She photographed that one too. At 11:03, Dutch came into the filing room. You get a message from an unknown number, he said. 2, she said. I documented them. Dutch's jaw tightened. Rafe wants you to move your work to the main garage for the rest of the day. Why, because the scale office has a window, he said, and right now we'd rather you be somewhere that doesn't. She looked at the contracts spread across the table, at the reconciliation document, at everything she'd built in 2.5 days. Give me 10 minutes to organize this so I can transport it without losing the sequence, she said. 8, Dutch said. She organized it in 7. The main garage was louder than the scale office and smelled like engine oil and metal shavings, and there was a table in the back corner that Cody had cleared for her, moved a set of tools to the floor. with the careful deliberateness of someone who had been told to make this happen and was taking it seriously. She set the reconciliation document and the vendor contracts on the table, sat down, picked up her pencil. Rafe appeared beside her on. Saul called the main line 20 minutes ago, he said. Asked for the records manager by name. She looked up. He knows my name. He used your name, Rafe said, which means someone told him. Preston, she said. It landed in the air between them, and Rafe's expression shifted not with surprise, but with the grim recognition of a man who had been watching two separate storms and had just seen them merge. Your ex-husband knows Garrett Saul, he said. I don't know that, she said. But Preston has been tracking me since I left. If Saul was monitoring the yard and Preston was looking for me, and those two information streams crossed, she stopped, thought it through. Preston doesn't care about your yard. But if someone told him I was here and offered him something in exchange for information about me, he'd trade, Rafe said. Preston trades everything, she said. It's how he thinks. Everything is a transaction. The thought of it, the specific configuration of it, Preston and Saul intersecting over her location, over her name, over the information that she was the woman in the office who was building the thing that could destroy Saul's plan, made something in her chest go hard and cold in a way that was not fear. It was past fear. It was the particular clarity that came when you understood the full shape of the problem and your mind stopped spending energy on anxiety and redirected it entirely to solution. It doesn't change the reconciliation, she said. It changes the timeline. She looked at Rafe. How long before Saul moves? My red, Rafe said. He sent the messages this morning. He called this afternoon. That's escalation. He doesn't have much time before Klein comes back and he knows it. He paused. I'd say tomorrow, maybe the day after. Then I need to finish tonight, she said. Rafe looked at the stack of documents. At her. What do you need, he said. Quiet, she said, and the environmental logs. The full 18 months. Done, he said. He moved away. Dutch set a sandwich next to her elbow 20 minutes later, without comment, and walked away before she could thank him. She ate it while she worked, reading vendor contracts with one hand and writing with the other, building the cross-reference table that was the structural heart of the reconciliation, the document that showed side by side the original correct record and the manipulated version with the date of manipulation, the document ID, and the specific nature of the discrepancy annotated in plain language. By 2 p.m, she had 47 pages. By 3:30, she had 54. At 4:15, Cody appeared at the corner of the table. Rafe says there's a car been parked on County Road 7 for the past 2 hours, he said. Dark sedan. Nobody's gotten out. She kept writing. Okay, she said. Doesn't that... Cody stopped himself. It concerns me, she said, but it doesn't change what I'm doing. If I stop building this because someone is watching, then the watching worked. She looked up at you. Who's watching the car? 2 of our guys, he said, at the fence line. Good, she said. Tell Rafe that if the car moves toward the gate, I want to know immediately, not after immediately. Cody nodded and left. She wrote. The environmental logs were the last piece and also the most damning. She found it buried in the disposal records from 11 months ago, a set of certifications for oil disposal that listed a contractor she didn't recognize. She had cross-referenced every contractor in the documents by this point, which meant she knew immediately that this one was anomalous. She searched the vendor contracts. The name wasn't there. She searched the tow intake logs. The name appeared twice in the same month as the disposal certifications for services that had no corresponding physical record in the yard's operations log. A contractor who existed on paper and not in practice. Who had been paid, she found the payment records in the 3rd environmental log folder, a total of $4,200 across 3 transactions. Money that had moved through Iron Meridian's accounts to an entity that did not appear to actually operate. She sat back. This was the piece she had been missing. The manipulation wasn't just about misclassifying incoming metal. That was the visible layer, the thing designed to attract Klein's attention. The deeper layer was the financial one, a ghost contractor drawing money from the yard's operational accounts, creating a paper trail that looked like embezzlement, not misclassification, theft, the kind of finding that didn't just result in fines, it resulted in criminal referrals. Saul hadn't been trying to get Iron Meridian fined. He had been trying to get Rafe arrested. She stood up from the table so fast the chair scraped back, and Dutch, who was 15 feet away doing something at the workbench, looked up sharply. "Get Rafe," she said. "Now." Dutch was already moving. Rafe was there in 90 seconds. She showed him. She walked him through it the way she'd walk Klein through the disposal logs, fast, precise, no softening. When she finished, Rafe stood very still. "The contractor name," he said. "ARV Environmental Services." "You know it," she said. "It's one of Saul's shell companies," Rafe said. "He has 3 of them. Different names, same registration address in the county over." The stillness went even stiller. He wasn't just trying to shut us down. He was running money through our accounts. If Klein found that before you did, it would have looked like Rafe Calder was paying Garrett Saul's company with Iron Meridian funds, she said, either as a partner or as a blackmail payment. Either way, criminal. "Either way, I lose everything," Rafe said. She looked at him, at the face of a man who had just seen the actual shape of the thing that had been built against him. Not a nuisance, not a fine, not a licensing problem. A trap, designed with precision, baited with his own records, set to spring the moment a county compliance officer looked at the right documents in the wrong order. "You didn't know?" she said. "I knew something was wrong," he said. "I didn't know how deep." "Now you do," she said, "and now it goes into the reconciliation. All of it, the ghost contractor, the payments, the registration documents." She picked up her pencil. "When I'm done, Klein won't just clear Iron Meridian. He'll have everything he needs to open an investigation into Saul." Rafe looked at her for a long moment. "Tessa," he said. She looked up. "When this is done," he said, "Saul is going to know you built it." "He already knows I'm building something," she said. "That's what the messages were." "Knowing you're building something and knowing you finished it are different levels of threat," he said. "When Klein walks out of here with that reconciliation in hand, Saul will know exactly what happened. And he'll know your name." "He already has my name," she said. "You told me that an hour ago." "I'm telling you what that means going forward," Rafe said. She held his gaze. "I know what it means." "Do you?" "It means I need to finish faster than he moves," she said. "So I need you to stop talking to me and let me work." Something shifted in Rafe's face. Not quite the almost smile from 2 days ago. Something fuller than that and more serious and harder to categorize, because it was the expression of a man who was recalibrating for the 3rd or 4th time and had stopped being surprised by the recalibration. "Okay," he said. He stepped back. She worked. At 6:45, the car on County Road 7 moved. Cody told her immediately appeared at her elbow, his voice low and fast. "It's gone. Move south toward the county line." "Toward Saul's territory," she said. "Yeah." "He's reporting back," she said. "He's been watching all day to see if I left. I didn't leave." She kept writing. "He knows I'm still here." "Is that bad?" Cody said. "It means tomorrow morning is when he moves," she said. "Whatever he's planning, it happens tomorrow. Because the day after is when Klein comes back, and he can't afford for Klein to come back with me still in this room." Cody went still. "You're sure?" "No," she said, "but it's the logical sequence. And so far, everything about this has been logical." She set her pencil down for a moment and looked at him. He was younger than she'd first thought, maybe 26, and the watchfulness she'd initially read as deliberate training was she now understood something more instinctive. He had grown up in a world where you watch things carefully or you paid for not watching them. "Cody," she said. "Yeah. Make sure Rafe knows, not as a suggestion, as a specific heads up. I think someone is coming to this yard tomorrow morning with the intent to get those documents or discredit whoever is holding them before Klein arrives." Cody absorbed this. "Discredit how?" he said. She thought about the note. "Make sure the woman in the office can't testify." "I don't know exactly," she said, "but I'd rather Rafe prepare for multiple possibilities than assume it'll be obvious." Cody nodded and went. She turned back to the reconciliation. 61 pages by 7:30. She had not looked at her phone since the second message at 10:47. She was not going to look at it until she was done. Whatever Preston had sent in the intervening hours could wait. It had been waiting for 6 years, and it could wait 9 more hours. At 8:15, Dutch came back and told her the yard was technically closed, and she was technically still here. "I know," she said. "Rafe said you can stay," Dutch said. There are two guys at the gate tonight who aren't usually at the gate, just so you know. She understood what he was telling her. I'll be done by midnight, she said. You need anything? She looked at the stack of documents, at the environmental logs still open in front of her, at the 61 pages. Coffee, she said. Whatever's left in the pot. Dutch came back with coffee that was 3 hours old and tasted like road tar. She drank all of it. She wrote, the final section of the reconciliation was the one she had been building toward from the beginning. The summary document, the one that pulled every thread together and stated the conclusion plainly. She wrote it the way she wrote everything for an audience that knew nothing, structured to lead from evidence to conclusion, without any gap that a defense attorney or a skeptical county official could step into. She wrote it twice, the first time to get it right, the second time to make it clear. At 11:49, she set her pencil down. 67 pages. She gathered them into order, paper clipped them in sections, wrote a cover page by hand, date, subject, her name, her title, her contact information, and placed it at the front. Set the original discrepancy documents in a separate folder marked Source Materials, with each one numbered to correspond with its reference in the reconciliation text. She looked at what she had built. It was, she thought, the most important thing she had ever made. More important than anything she had done in the years before Preston, in the years of ambition in graduate school, and the idea of a career built on this exact skill, finding patterns and records, making accurate what was inaccurate, building accountability from chaos. She had built it in 3 days in a scrapyard while running from her ex-husband on 4 hours of sleep and bad coffee in the back corner of a garage that smelled like engine oil for people she had known less than a week. She was not sentimental about this. Sentimentality was a luxury for people whose circumstances had room in them. But she was certain, with the specific certainty of someone who understood their own work, that it was right. Every statement sourced, every date confirmed, every discrepancy explained. The ghost contractor, the payments, the 3 versions of the inspection report, Marcus's 20 months of systematic manipulation, the note at the bottom of the banker's box. All of it. Correct. Documented. Irrefutable. She put the reconciliation in a manila envelope and wrote Klein County Compliance Office Confidential on the front. Then she took out her phone. 7 messages from Preston. She didn't read them. 1 voicemail from a number she didn't recognize. Not the same number as the morning messages. A different one. She played it. A man's voice, not young, with the flat vowels of someone from the region, said, Ms. Rowland, this is regarding a legal matter involving your estranged husband. Please return this call at your earliest convenience. A number. A name she didn't recognize. She played it again, noted the number, noted the name. Then she looked at the envelope on the table. Tomorrow Saul was coming. She was almost certain of it. Not Saul personally. Men like Saul didn't come personally when they could send instruments, but something Saul had arranged, something designed to arrive before Klein and after the night shift and find her either gone or unable to speak. She had the reconciliation. She had 67 pages of irrefutable documentation. And she had the one thing she hadn't had when she walked through Iron Meridian's gate 6 days ago, with $38.16 and a cracked phone screen and a message that said, I know where you are. She had a room full of people who knew she was here and had put someone at the gate tonight because of it. She looked at the envelope. She was not safe. She understood that. She was not protected in any way that would hold against a determined man with resources and a plan. But she was not alone, which was different from safe, and in her experience, more important. She picked up her bag. She left the envelope on the table under a coffee cup for weight so it wouldn't shift. And she walked toward the gate where the lights were still on, and 2 men she didn't know by name were standing exactly where Dutch had said they would be, and one of them nodded at her when she came through and she nodded back. Tomorrow, she thought, tomorrow we find out what Saul sends. And then almost immediately after a second thought, quieter, harder, thought she had been keeping at the back of her mind for 3 days because she had not had the space to fully face it. Tomorrow, Preston's 14 days starts running down another day. She walked toward the transit stop. Behind her, Iron Meridian's lights stayed on through the night. She was back at Iron Meridian by 6:58. She had slept 4 hours real sleep this time, not the ceiling-staring kind, because her body had simply stopped negotiating and pulled her under somewhere around 1 in the morning. She'd woken at 5:43 with the particular clarity of someone whose brain had kept working while the rest of them rested, and the first thing she thought before she was fully conscious was the voicemail name. She had noted it last night but not yet searched it. She searched it on the transit ride in. The name from the voicemail, the one attached to the number that claimed to be calling about a legal matter involving her estranged husband, was Raymond Cusk, attorney at law. She found his website in 40 seconds. Family law asset disputes contested separations. Office in Preston's County. Listed on the State Bar Association's directory with a clean record except for one disciplinary note from 4 years ago, a complaint regarding document misrepresentation in a property dispute. The complaint had been resolved without formal sanction. Document misrepresentation. She stared at that for 3 stops. Preston had not hired a family law attorney to help her understand her rights. Preston had hired Raymond Cusk, specifically a man with a documented history of bending paperwork, to build the legal framework that would pull her back. The 14-day response window wasn't a procedural formality. It was a trap designed to look like procedure. If she didn't respond, it defaulted in Preston's favor. If she responded without representation, she would be responding to a document she didn't fully understand, prepared by a man who specialized in making wrong documents look right. She knew that pattern. She had spent 3 days dismantling its structural cousin. Garrett led her through the gate without a word, but she noticed he was watching the road behind her when she came through, not casually the way people glanced at traffic. Deliberately. She turned and looked. County Road 7 was empty in both directions. "Quiet night," she said. "So far," Garrett said. She went to the main garage. The reconciliation envelope was where she had left it under the coffee cup, exactly as she'd positioned it. She picked it up, checked that the pages were in order, and set it on the table in front of her. Then she opened her laptop and pulled up the summary document she had written at the motel 2 nights ago. She added 4 paragraphs. The ghost contractor payment schedule, now fully cross-referenced. The voicemail from Raymond Cusk, documented with timestamp and a number. A note about the messages from the unknown number, 2 of them, both timestamped, both photographed. And a final paragraph that she wrote slowly and precisely because it was the paragraph that made the summary a complete document rather than a working draft. She saved it, sent it to 2 email addresses, one she'd had for years, one she'd created last week, specifically for this purpose, accessed only from her laptop, not her phone. Then she closed the laptop and picked up her pencil. Rafe came in at 7:22. He looked at her at the envelope at the laptop. "You stayed," he said. "I left at midnight," when she said. "I came back." "I know," he said. "Garrett told me." He sat down across the table. He had the look of a man who had not slept much either, but wore it differently than most people did. Not tired exactly, just more distilled. Like sleeplessness had burned away everything non-essential and left only the operational core. "I found something last night," she said, "in the environmental logs. The ghost contractor RV Environmental Services. I cross-referenced the payment records and found the registration documents through the county business registry. Saul's name isn't on them, but the registered agent is a woman named Carla Denning, who appears on 2 of Saul's other shell company filings." She slid the relevant pages across the table. "It's in the reconciliation, section 4. Rafe looked at the pages without touching them. "You connected Saul directly," he said. "Indirectly," she said, "through Carla Denning. It's not a direct link, it's a documented associative chain. But it's strong enough that if Klein follows it, he'll find Saul at the end of it." "A good attorney could break an associative chain," Rafe said. "A good attorney could try," she said, "but they'd have to break 23 documented links in sequence. It's not a chain, it's a net." She paused. "I've been building nets for 3 days." Rafe was quiet. Then Dutch said, "You think Saul moves today?" "That's my read," she said. "Klein comes back tomorrow. If Saul has someone monitoring the yard, and he does, we saw the car yesterday, then he knows I'm still here. Still building. He's out of time." "What do you think he sends?" Rafe said. Before she could answer, Cody appeared in the garage doorway. "Rafe," he said, "2 vehicles at the gate, not regulars. One of them is asking for the records manager." The room went very still. She felt it in her chest, not fear, not quite. The specific physiological response of a body that had been on sustained alert for 4 days and had just received confirmation that the thing it had been bracing for was arriving. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was steady. She noted this with a detachment that would have surprised her a year ago and didn't surprise her at all now. Who's asking? Rafe said. Man in a gray suit, Cody said. Says he's from a legal firm, has documents. Rafe looked at Tessa. Raymond Cusk, she said. Rafe's jaw shifted. Your ex-husband's attorney. Yes. She had already known this was coming, had known it since the voicemail, since she connected Preston to Saul through the information exchange she'd mapped on the transit ride in. Preston didn't care about Saul's war with Iron Meridian, but Saul had offered Preston something in exchange for Tessa's location and her name legal leverage. Cusk arriving at the yard today was not coincidence. It was coordination. Saul needed her neutralized. Preston needed her compliant. The two objectives had found a common instrument. What does Cusk want? Rafe said. He wants me to accept service, she said. The legal filing Preston's been threatening. If I accept it here today, in front of witnesses with no attorney and no preparation, the 14-day clock starts running in the worst possible conditions for me. She looked at the envelope on the table. And it gives Saul a reason to tell Klein that the records manager at Iron Meridian is currently involved in contested legal proceedings, which makes me look like someone with personal instability, someone whose documentation might be questioned. He's trying to discredit you before Klein gets here, Rafe said. He's trying to do two things at once, she said. Serve me and discredit me. One move, two outcomes. Dutch had appeared in the doorway beside Cody now. The older man whose name she had finally learned was Vic was somewhere behind them. She was aware without looking around that the garage had more people in it than it had had 60 seconds ago. What do you want to do? Rafe said. She looked at him. At the straightforwardness of the question, not what should we do, not let me handle this. What do you want to do? She noticed it. I want to accept service, she said. Rafe raised an eyebrow. Willingly. Strategically, she said. Because if I refuse service, Cusk files a declaration that I evaded, and that goes into Preston's motion as evidence of bad faith. But if I accept it calmly on my terms in a place where everything is documented, she looked around the garage at the men positioned at its edges at the table with the reconciliation envelope and her laptop and her 67 pages, then I control the narrative of how it happened. She stood up. I need one thing from you, she said to Rafe. Name it, he said. When I go to that gate, I go alone, she said. No one stands beside me. No one speaks unless I ask them to. She paused. But I need someone with a phone recording from the moment Cusk is admitted. Done, Rafe said. He looked at Cody. Cody already had his phone out. She picked up the envelope, thought for a moment, set it back down. She would not carry the reconciliation to the gate that was 67 pages she could not allow to be photographed or cataloged by anyone connected to Saul. Instead, she picked up only her own phone, her ID, and the small notebook she had been using for handwritten notes. She walked to the gate. Raymond Cusk was a compact man in his early 50s, with the groomed precision of someone who considered his appearance a professional tool. He was standing outside the gate with a younger associate who held a leather document folder, and there was a second vehicle parked behind Cusk's, a dark SUV, with tinted windows that she looked at for exactly 1 second, and then stopped looking at because whatever was in that vehicle was designed to be noticed, and she was not going to give it the reaction it was designed to produce. Ms. Rowland, Cusk said, professionally warm, the warmth of a man who had made a career of delivering bad news in a tone that made the recipient feel briefly that they were being cared for. Mr. Cusk, she said. He paused. She saw the pause, half a second, barely visible. She had used his name before he introduced himself, which meant she had done research, which meant she was not the unprepared woman he had been expecting. You're aware of why I'm here, he said. You're here to serve documents in a contested separation proceeding filed by my estranged husband, Preston Vale, she said. I received your voicemail. I didn't expect you to return my call from here, Cusk said. I didn't return it, she said. I'm at my place of employment. You came to me. I wasn't sure you'd still be. He stopped himself. Still be what, she said. He adjusted his expression back to professionally warm. I wasn't sure of your schedule. You knew where I was, she said. You were told? Another pause, slightly longer. Ms. Rowland, I'm here on behalf of my client to serve you with a response deadline in a legal proceeding that involves. I know what the proceeding involves, she said. I'll accept service. I want the documents dated with today's date and today's time, And I want a receipt of service. Cusk blinked. Of course, that's standard. And I want it noted on the record that service was accepted at my place of employment, Iron Meridian Auto Salvage, Callaway, County Road 7, in the presence of my employer and colleagues. She said it cleanly without emphasis, the same way she said everything. You can note that however you normally note location of service. Cusk looked at her for a moment, at the gate behind her, at whatever he could see of the yard beyond it. She did not turn around. She knew without looking that Dutch and Cody were visible, somewhere behind her, not aggressive, not confrontational, simply present the way the men at Iron Meridian were present, existing in the space. You're not represented, Cusk said, less a statement than a probe. Not at this moment, she said. Accepting service doesn't require representation. The response deadline is 14 days from today, she said, which I'll count from the date stamp on the documents. I'd like the documents, Mr. Cusk. He gestured to the associate who opened the leather folder and produced a sealed envelope. Standard legal size. Tessa took it, held it, did not open it. Is there anything else? She said. Cusk looked at her with the expression of a man who had arrived with a script and found that the other person had not received their copy. Ms. Rowland, he said, my client is not unreasonable. There's a settlement framework that might make this process considerably simpler for both parties. If you'd like to discuss, I'm at work, she said. Of course, but I'm at work, she said again, exact same tone. Not hard, not warm. Simply factual with the weight of a door that has been closed and is not going to be opened by pushing on it. Cusk was quiet for a moment. Then from the dark SUV, the door opened. She had known it was coming. She had looked at the SUV for exactly 1 second when she arrived at the gate enough to register it, and then she had made herself stop looking at it because she had known whatever came out of it was designed to destabilize her. And destabilization was not something she could afford in this specific moment. But she was human, and when the door opened, she felt it move through her that particular species of dread that was not fear of physical harm, but fear of something worse, the fear of being reduced back to the person she had been, the person who flinched. Preston Vale was taller than Cusk, broad through the shoulders with the effortless physical presence of a man who had always been the largest person in rooms he considered important. He was in a jacket and open collar, not dressed for confrontation, dressed for a conversation which was more threatening because it meant he had already decided how this was going to go. He walked toward the gate, stopped 10 feet from her. Tessa, he said. He said her name the way he always said her name, with a specific warmth that was actually possession, the verbal equivalent of a hand on the back of the neck. She was aware of her heartbeat. She was aware of the 6 feet of chain-link gate between them. She was aware of Cody's phone recording somewhere behind her left shoulder. Preston, she said. You look tired, he said. I've been working, she said. Here. He looked at the gate, at the yard beyond it. She could see him constructing his read of the situation, the scrapyard, the men, the woman he had spent 6 years believing he understood completely, standing in front of him in work clothes with a legal envelope in one hand and a notebook in the other, showing him nothing. This isn't what I thought you'd do, he said, when you left. I know, she said. You're going to make this very difficult, he said. Not angry, almost conversational. The tone he used when he was telling her how things were going to be while presenting it as observation. The documents have been served, she said. I'll respond within the deadline. If there's nothing else, Tessa. The warmth tightened slightly. Come home. We can fix this. Whatever you think happened, we can talk about it. The legal process is, he paused, chose the word messy for everyone. The legal process is what you initiated, she said. I'll respond through the legal process. With what he said. There it was, the question he'd been building toward, the one designed to remind her of the $38.16, the cracked phone, the motel by the night, the fundamental precarity of her position. With what? What resources? What attorney? What foundation did she imagine she was standing on? She looked at him. With documentation, she said. Preston's expression shifted. Barely. But she knew his face the way you knew a place you had lived in for 6 years, every change in light, every shift in weather. He had not expected that word. I've gotten very good at documentation this week, she said. It turns out I always was, and I just didn't have the space to use it. She held his gaze. 14 days, Preston, you'll have your response. Preston looked at her for a long moment, at the gate, at whatever he was reading in her face or failing to read, which was the thing that was visibly unsettling him. He had always read her. He had built 6 years of control on his ability to read her and respond to what he found. And right now he was finding something he didn't have a script for. This place, he said, looking past her into the yard. These people, you don't know what you've gotten into. I know exactly what I've gotten into, she said. I've read every document associated with it. A beat of silence. Tessa, goodbye, Preston, she said. She turned away from the gate, walked back toward the garage at the same pace she'd walked to the gate. Not fast, not slow. She did not look back. She had learned a long time ago that looking back was the thing that cost you the most. Behind her, she heard Cusk say something to Preston in a low voice. In Preston's response, which she couldn't make out, and then the sound of the SUV door, and then the engine, and then the vehicles moving away down County Road 7. She kept walking. Dutch fell into step beside her when she was halfway across the yard. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said, "That was Preston." "Yes," she said. "He's taller than I expected." "He always is," she said. Dutch looked at her. She could feel him looking. "You okay?" he said. "Ask me in an hour," she said. She went back to the garage, sat down at the table, set the legal envelope to one side. She would open it later when she had the space to read it correctly. She picked up her pencil, looked at the reconciliation envelope, looked at her notes. Rafe was standing at the far end of the table. "Cody got it all?" he said. "Good," she said. "Date and timestamp on the recording went, yes." "Add it to the documentation," she said. The recording of service being accepted, Preston and Cusk's presence at the yard of the second vehicle. "All of it goes in the reconciliation," Rafe said. "In a separate file," she said. "Preston and Saul are connected. That connection matters to both the reconciliation and to my own situation. I want it documented separately so it can be used independently if needed." Rafe nodded. "You're building 2 cases at once," he said. "I've been building 2 cases at once since day 1, she said. "I just didn't know it until this morning." She looked at her notebook. Then she looked up at Rafe. "Saul," she said, "what's his rate going to be when Cusk reports back?" "That you didn't break," Rafe said, "and that the documents are finished." "And that Klein is coming tomorrow," she said. "Yes." "So tonight is his last window," she said. "He can't send Cusk again. That card's been played. He can't use Preston again. I've accepted service. The legal angle is live. Anything else Preston does now looks like harassment." She organized her thoughts the way she organized documents in logical sequence. "What's left in his playbook?" Rafe sat down across from her. "You sure you want to think like that?" he said. "I need to think like that," she said. "What does he do when the legal instrument doesn't work and the paper trail instrument is almost burned?" Rafe was quiet for a moment. "He gets someone to the yard before Klein arrives. Someone who can access the records directly." "And do what with them?" she said. "Remove them," Rafe said, "or alter them. If the reconciliation disappears or is visibly compromised, Klein comes back tomorrow and has nothing useful to work with. The investigation stalls, and Saul has more time." She looked at the reconciliation envelope. "The physical copy can be moved," she said. "Taken off-site. Somewhere Saul cannot access even if he gets someone into the yard." "Where?" Rafe said. She thought for a moment. "Does Dutch have a home address that Saul doesn't know?" Rafe almost smiled. "Dutch moves around." "Give Dutch the envelope tonight," she said. "He keeps it until Klein arrives tomorrow. I keep a digital copy." She patted her laptop. "And I keep a second digital copy off-site already done. 3 locations. Saul would have to hit all 3 simultaneously to eliminate the documentation." "You already did the off-site copy," Rafe said. "2 nights ago," she said. "The night I found the ghost contractor." He looked at her for a moment with the expression she had come to recognize as his version of being impressed. Not demonstrative, not loud, just a particular quality of attention. "You planned for this," he said. "I planned for the worst case," she said. "Preston taught me that. He spent 6 years being the worst case." She picked up her pencil. "It turns out it's a useful skill when the worst case is someone else's problem." Dutch came in at noon with food, actual food. Not a motel sandwich, a container of something that smelled like chili from somewhere that had a kitchen, and set it in front of her with the same matter-of-fact wordlessness he used for everything. Eat, he said. She ate. At 2:17, Rafe's phone rang. He looked at the screen, stepped away from the table, and took the call. She kept working. She was writing the cover letter for Klein, one page clean, addressed to the Callaway County Compliance Office, summarizing the reconciliation document and its contents and explicitly inviting follow-up investigation into RV Environmental Services and its connection to competing salvage operations. She had finished the cover letter and was reviewing it for the third time when Rafe came back. His face had changed, not dramatically, not in ways most people would have caught. She caught it. What happened? She said. Saul made a complaint to the county licensing board this morning, Rafe said. Against Iron Meridian. Against me personally. He paused. And against the records manager. She set her pencil down. He named me, she said. By name, Rafe said. The complaint alleges that Iron Meridian's records have been actively altered by a recently hired employee with no verifiable credentials as part of a scheme to obstruct a county compliance audit. She absorbed this. He flipped it, she said. He took your play and ran it in reverse, Rafe said. He's telling the county that you're the one who manipulated the records. For a moment, just a moment, she felt the specific vertigo of watching something she had built threatened with being used against her. The reconciliation, the documentation, her own work reframed as the crime instead of the evidence. Then it passed. When was the complaint filed? She said. Mid-17 this morning, Rafe said. She looked at her laptop, pulled up the email she had sent 2 nights ago to herself, the summary document time-stamped and logged. My summary document was saved and emailed at 2:04 in the morning 2 days ago, she said. That's 48 hours before Saul's complaint. It documents the discrepancies as they existed before I began organizing them. She looked at Rafe. He's claiming I altered records that I had already documented in their unaltered state before he made the complaint. In a time-stamped email I sent to myself. Rafe was quiet for a moment. He didn't know about the email, he said. He didn't know about the email, she said. So his complaint is self-defeating, she said. The moment Klein sees the time-stamped summary alongside the reconciliation, Saul's complaint doesn't look like a counter-allegation. It looks like consciousness of guilt, an attempt to preempt the investigation by discrediting the investigator before she can present her findings. She picked up her pencil, which makes the reconciliation more powerful, not less. Rafe sat down. He looked at her with something she still didn't have a complete name for, the same thing she'd seen in fragments over the past 4 days, assembling itself into a whole. Tessa, he said. Yes. He's going to escalate, he said. Tonight, when Cusk reports back about the gate and my contact tells me the licensing complaint didn't land the way he hoped, he's going to escalate. I want you to know that. I know that, she said. And I want you to know that nothing that happens on this yard tonight is going to touch those documents or touch you, he said. That's not a guess. That's an arrangement I've made. She looked at him. I'm not asking you for protection, she said. I'm not offering protection, he said. I'm telling you a fact about how this yard operates. He held her gaze. Nobody gets to the records. Nobody gets to the woman who built them. That's the fact. She held his gaze for a moment. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. She went back to the cover letter. At 5:47, exactly as she had predicted, exactly as the logic of the situation demanded, a truck she didn't recognize came to the gate of Iron Meridian. Cody told her about it 40 seconds later, appearing at the garage doorway with his phone recording already active. Wants access to review records, Cody said. Says he's from a document authentication firm. He's not, she said. She didn't look up from the cover letter. No, Cody agreed. What did Rafe say? Rafe said the yard is closed for independent review, pending a county compliance audit, Cody said, and that all records access would be mediated through the compliance officer present tomorrow morning. She finished the sentence she was writing. Perfect, she said. The truck left at 5:53. Cody confirmed it audibly from the gate. She put her pencil down at 7:15. The cover letter was done. She placed it on top of the reconciliation inside the envelope and resealed the envelope with fresh tape, handed it to Dutch, who took it without ceremony and tucked it under his arm. Take it home, she said. Don't open it. Bring it back tomorrow at 8. I know, Dutch said. I know you know, she said. I'm saying it out loud because I document things. Dutch almost laughed. It was the closest she had seen him come to it, a sound that started in his chest and made it about halfway to his mouth before he redirected it into a noise that was technically a cough. He left with the envelope. She closed her laptop, sat for a moment in the quiet of the garage after a day that had contained Preston Vale and Raymond Cusk and Garrett Saul's licensing complaint in an unknown truck and 67 pages in a cover letter and a threat she had prepared for in a move she had already countered. Rafe came and sat across from her. They sat in silence for a moment. Klein comes at 9, he said. I'll be here at 7:30, she said. The complaint Saul filed, Rafe said. He copied it to 3 county offices. Someone will call Klein tonight. Let them call, she said. When Klein reads the reconciliation, the complaint reads as what it is. And if Klein walks in tomorrow already biased, Rafe said. She looked at him. Then I walk him through every page until the bias has no room left to stand, she said. I've done it before. I'm good in a room with a clipboard. Rafe looked at her, at the table, at everything that had happened on and around this table in the past 4 days. Yes, he said simply, you are. She picked up her bag. Preston's legal envelope was inside it, still unopened, still sealed. She had 14 days. She had a timestamped summary document. She had 67 pages of irrefutable documentation and the recording of Cusk delivering service, and Preston Vale standing at the gate of Iron Meridian on a Tuesday morning, visible proof that he knew where she was and had come here on Saul's timeline. She also had something she was still learning to name, something that lived in the fact that Dutch had taken the envelope home, and Cody had kept his phone running, and Garrett had watched the road, and Rafe had said nobody gets to the woman who built them with the same matter-of-factness he used to say, start with the filing cabinet. She stood up. Rafe, she said. He looked up. Thank you, she said, for letting me find it. He understood what she meant. Not just the records, not just the manipulation, not just the ghost contractor and the 23 links of the net she had built. The other thing, the thing underneath the work. Tomorrow, he said, finish it. She walked to the gate. Behind her, Iron Meridian settled into its nighttime posture, lights at the perimeter. 2 men she knew by name at positions she didn't need to ask about the organized machinery of a place that knew how to protect what mattered. She had 14 days to answer Preston. She had 1 night to prepare for Klein. She walked toward the transit stop with the specific posture of someone who was no longer counting what they had left, but building what came next. She didn't sleep much, but this time it wasn't dread keeping her awake. It was precision. She lay in the motel room going through the reconciliation in her mind, the way a surgeon went through a procedure the night before, every step, every sequence, every point where something could go wrong, and what she would do if it did. She had built the document. Now she had to deliver it. And delivering it meant walking Dorian Klein through 67 pages of material in a way that left no exit for doubt, no ledge for skepticism, no corner where Saul's preemptive complaint could take root. She had done this before in smaller rooms with smaller stakes. She knew how it felt when a presentation was airtight. She knew how it felt when it wasn't. This one was. She was certain of that in the way she was certain of things she had built herself from the foundation with her own hands. At 4 in the morning, she got up and opened her laptop and read the reconciliation summary one more time. Not to change it, to inhabit it fully so that when she spoke tomorrow, she was speaking from complete understanding rather than from memory of a document. She read for 90 minutes. Then she made herself lie back down, closed her eyes, and somewhere in the gray space between wakefulness and sleep, she thought tomorrow, one way or another, this is over. Not her life that was just beginning, she could feel it beginning, the way you felt a season change before the temperature caught up. But this specific chapter, this specific fight that had been building since she walked through Iron Meridian's gate with $38.16 and a cracked screen and a message from a man who thought he owned her future. Tomorrow it ended. She arrived at 7:22. Dutch was already at the gate with the envelope. He held it out to her when she was still 20 feet away, and she took it and checked the seal intact and tucked it under her arm. You eat, he said. Not yet, she said. Break room, he said. Vic made eggs. She stopped, looked at Dutch. Something about the absolute normalcy of it, Vic made eggs, as though this were an ordinary Thursday at a place where ordinary Thursdays happened, cut through the calibrated tension she had been maintaining for 12 hours and left something warmer in its place. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me," he said. "Vic made them." She went to the break room. Vic was there, the older man with the 40-year shoulders, standing at a small stove with the focused expression of a man for whom cooking was not a hobby, but a statement. He handed her a plate without looking up. "Eat fast," he said. "You need to be sharp." "I am sharp," she said. "Then eat fast and stay sharp," he said. She ate fast. The eggs were good, better than they had any business being given the kitchen, and she ate all of them and drank the coffee Dutch had left on the counter and felt something settle in her. Not calm exactly, something more purposeful than calm. The feeling of a person who has prepared correctly and knows it. Rafe found her in the break room at 7:51. "Klein called," he said. "He's coming at 9 as scheduled. He also told me his office received a complaint last night. He named Saul's company, not Saul directly, but the filing came through an attorney registered in Saul's county." "He told you about the complaint," she said. "He wanted to know if I had a response," Rafe said. "What did you tell him?" "I told him the records manager would address it when he arrived." Rafe looked at her. "He asked who the records manager was. I gave him your name." "How did he respond?" Rafe paused. "He said he remembered you." She thought about the filing room, the buzzing light, Klein looking at her across 14 months of disposal logs and saying, "You've been here how long?" She thought about the moment she had told him 4 days, and he had looked at the reconciliation folder on the table with an expression she had cataloged as controlled surprise. "He remembered me as cooperative or as a problem," she said. "As thorough," Rafe said. "Aw." She picked up the envelope. "Good," she said. At 8:45, she set up in the scale office. Not the filing room she chose, the scale office, deliberately because it was the room where she had first spoken to Klein, the room that was the operational heart of the yard, the room that said, "This is where Iron Meridian's legitimate business happens." She arranged the reconciliation on the desk, organized in sections with paperclip dividers. Laptop open, summary document pulled up. Source materials in a separate folder to her left, each one numbered. Cover letter on top. Cody had set 2 chairs across the desk without being asked. She looked at them. "How did you know?" she said. "Rafe said Klein usually brings an associate," Cody said. "Move them to the side," she said, "not facing the desk, angled." She thought for a moment. "The person who's going to be across this desk is Klein. Only Klein. I want him to feel like this is a conversation, not a deposition." Cody moved the chairs. "Anything else?" he said. "Close the yard gate after Klein comes through," she said. "Standard protocol, nothing unusual about it." He nodded and left. She sat down behind the desk, placed her hands flat on either side of the reconciliation envelope. Breathed. The morning was quiet around her, the regular sounds of the yard engines and metal, and the particular industrial heartbeat she had grown accustomed to over the past week. In the way you grew accustomed to the sounds of a place that had decided to let you exist in it. She was ready. Klein arrived at 9:03. He came in with the same clipboard, the same county seal bag, and an associate she hadn't seen before, younger woman, late 20s, with a tablet and a look of careful attention. Klein looked at the scale office and at Tessa behind the desk and at the organized materials, and then he looked at his associate, and whatever communication passed between them, it was brief. He sat down across from her. "Ms. Rowland," he said. "Mr. Klein," she said. "Thank you for coming back." "I told you I would," he said. "You did," she said. "I appreciate people who do what they say they'll do." She opened the envelope. She handed him the cover letter first. Let him read it. Watched his eyes move across it, not fast, not slow, the pace of a man who was reading carefully and not performing the act of reading carefully. There was a difference, and she could tell the difference. He finished the cover letter, set it down, looked at her. 67 pages, he said. 67 pages, she confirmed, organized in 5 sections. The first section is the structural overview, what the discrepancy pattern looks like across the full 14-month period with original documents alongside the manipulated versions. The second section is the chronological reconstruction, every individual discrepancy in date order, sourced and annotated. The third section addresses the environmental compliance records, specifically including the ghost contractor I identified. The fourth section is the vendor analysis. The fifth section is the connection documentation. Klein looked at the reconciliation in his hands with the expression of a man who had been given after a year of searching the thing he had been searching for, and who was experienced enough not to show the full extent of what that meant. "The complaint filed last night," he said. "Yes," she said. "I'd like to address that before we begin." "Go ahead." She pulled up the email on her laptop, turned the screen to face him. "This is a summary document I created and emailed to myself at 2:04 in the morning, 49 hours before the complaint was filed. It documents the discrepancies in the state they existed before I organized them, the original disorganization, the original inconsistencies. The timestamp is verifiable through my email provider's server records." She paused. "The complaint alleges that I altered records as part of an obstruction scheme. This document shows that I identified and recorded the unaltered discrepancies before the complaint existed, which means the complaint was filed in anticipation of this reconciliation, not in response to malfeasance by Iron Meridian." Klein looked at the screen, looked at the timestamp, looked at the email header. "Who filed the complaint?" he said. "The complaint was filed through an attorney in the adjacent county," she said. "I believe you know which one. The attorney has a documented professional relationship with a competing salvage operation, Garrett Saul, who operates Consolidated Metal Recovery 2 counties over." She opened the source materials folder and placed a single page in front of Klein. "This is the registration documentation for RV Environmental Services, the ghost contractor, whose payments appear in Iron Meridian's disposal records. The registered agent for RV Environmental Services appears on 2 other shell company filings associated with Saul's network. Section 3 of the reconciliation covers this in full." Klein picked up the registration document. His associate made a note on her tablet. Klein set the document down. "Start from the beginning, Mom," he said. She started from the beginning. She walked him through the reconciliation the way she had walked him through the disposal logs 4 days ago. Methodically, without softening, without editorializing. Just the facts in the order they happened and what they meant. She had spent 3 days building it and another night inhabiting it, and she knew it so completely that she could answer questions before they finished being asked, could locate any source document within seconds, could explain any annotation in plain language that required no background knowledge to follow. Klein was thorough. He asked hard questions. He went back to earlier sections after reading later ones looking for inconsistencies in her construction. He found none because there were none. She had built it for exactly this scrutiny, for the kind of careful, experienced skepticism that Klein brought to a room and it held. At 11:15, he stopped on the ghost contractor section. "RV Environmental Services," he said, $4,200 across 3 transactions. "Correct," she said. "These payments went through Iron Meridian's operational accounts." "They did," she said. "They were entered by Marcus Drell, who managed intake documentation from 14 months ago to 3 months ago. Marcus has since left the yard." She placed 2 pages in front of Klein. "These are the original payment authorization forms. The signature on them is Marcus Drell's, not Rafe Calder's, not any other current employees." Klein studied the signatures. "You're certain of the signature attribution," he said. "I'm certain of the sample," she said. "I cross-referenced against 12 other documents signed by Marcus Drell in the same period. The signature is consistent. I've documented the comparison in section 2 pages 31 through 34. Klein turned to pages 31 through 34. He read for 4 minutes without speaking. Then he looked up. "Ms. Roland Hustepton," he said. "Who built this?" She looked at him. "I did," she said. "In 4 days," he said. "In 3.5, she said. The first half day was filing cabinet reorganization." Klein looked at her with the expression she had seen on day 1 that controlled surprise the recalibration, but larger now, more fully formed. The expression of a man who had come to a scrapyard looking for a compliance violation and had instead found something that would occupy his office for the next 6 months. "I need to make a call," he said. "Of course," she said. "There's coffee in the break room." He stepped out. His associate stayed looking at the reconciliation with focused intensity, making notes on her tablet with rapid efficiency. Tessa sat behind the desk and folded her hands and waited. She had been waiting in various forms for 6 years. She had gotten good at it. The difference was that now when she waited, she was waiting from a position she had built herself rather than a position that had been built around her. Klein came back in 8 minutes. He sat down. His expression had changed not dramatically, but in the specific way it changed when a conversation with an authority higher than himself had added weight to what he was already holding. My office is opening a formal investigation into RV Environmental Services and its connection to competing salvage operations in this county and adjacent counties, he said. The reconciliation document will be submitted as primary evidence. He paused. Iron Meridian's compliance status is cleared pending final review of the investigation findings. She kept her expression steady. Cleared, she said. The documentation you've provided demonstrates that the discrepancies in Iron Meridian's records were introduced externally, not generated by operational negligence or intentional misrepresentation by the yard's management. He looked at her directly. The complaint filed last night is inconsistent with the timeline your documentation establishes. My office will be responding to it accordingly. Saul's complaint, the one designed to preempt her, to discredit her before she could speak, had just been used as additional evidence of his own guilt. She had seen it coming. She had even told Rafe it would happen, but seeing it happen, hearing it stated plainly by the county official who had the authority to act on it, produced a sensation in her chest that she hadn't fully anticipated. Not triumph. Triumph was too loud for what she felt. Something quieter and more durable. The feeling of a structure that had been built correctly, finally taking its full weight. There's one more thing, she said. Klein looked up. She placed the note on the desk in front of him. The handwritten one, 7 lines, the one she had found at the bottom of the banker's box. This was in Marcus Drell's storage files, she said. It was written 3 months ago. The last line concerns the person occupying the records management position, which was vacant at the time of writing. It references ensuring that person cannot testify. She held Klein's gaze. I'm the person currently in that position. I received 2 threatening messages from an unknown number on the day you came back to schedule our meeting. I documented both. And my estranged husband, who is in contact with Garrett Saul, based on the timeline I've reconstructed, arrived at this yard yesterday morning with an attorney to serve legal documents. She placed the photographs of the messages and her written documentation of the gate incident in front of Klein. I'm not alleging a specific crime, she said. I'm providing a complete record. What your office does with it is your determination. Klein looked at the note, at the photographs, at the gate documentation. He was quiet for a long moment. Your estranged husband, he said carefully, is he directly connected to Saul? I can document communication between his attorney and entities associated with Saul's operation, she said. The timeline of my ex-husband's attorney contacting me correlates directly with Saul's escalation against Iron Meridian. Whether that constitutes direct connection is for investigators to determine. She paused. But I wanted it on record. It's on record, Klein said. He gathered the documents carefully, organized them, placed them in his bag with the attention of a man who understood that what he was carrying had weight. He stood. His associate stood. At the door, Klein turned back. Ms. Rowland, he said. Yes. You've been here 1 week. 8 days, she said. He looked at her the way people looked at things they hadn't expected to find where they found them. The yard is fortunate, he said. The yard is organized, as she said. That's different. Something moved at the corner of Klein's mouth that was almost a smile. Then he left. She sat behind the desk for a moment after the scale office door closed. The yard sounds came back, gradually engines metal, the everyday working rhythm of Iron Meridian settling back into itself after the morning's held breath. She could hear at the edges of the sound the particular change in atmosphere that happen when a threat passes and the people who have been bracing against it allow themselves incrementally to release. She stood up, organized the remaining documents, closed the laptop, placed the source materials folder back in the filing cabinet in the correct location in the correct sequence, because that was how she did things. Rafe came in when she was halfway through organizing. He didn't ask how it went. He looked at her face and he knew. Klein opened an investigation, she said, formal, into Saul's shell companies and their connection to the documentation manipulation. Iron Meridian is cleared pending final review. Rafe was still for a moment. Not stunned, Rafe called her, didn't stun easily, but something in him shifted the way load-bearing structures shifted when the pressure they had been built to resist was finally removed. The complaint, he said. Klein is responding to it, she said. Based on the timeline, my documentation establishes it's going to read as an attempt to preempt the investigation rather than a legitimate allegation. So Saul just handed Klein more evidence, Rafe said. That's what happens when you move in a hurry against someone who isn't moving in a hurry, she said. Rafe looked at her for a long moment. Dutch appeared in the doorway, Cody behind him. Vic somewhere at the back edge of things, the way Vic always positioned himself present, but not pushing into the center. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then Dutch said, "So, we're good." "You're good," she said. "We have," Dutch said, and the correction was firm in the way Dutch was firm about things that mattered to him. She looked at him, at Cody, at Vic, at Rafe. 8 days ago, she had walked through this gate with $38.16 and a cracked phone in the particular species of desperation that comes from having used up every other option. She had come here because no one else had applied, because she was running out of time, because the world had narrowed to a single available door, and she had walked through it not knowing what was on the other side. What was on the other side was this: these people in this room with this look on their faces that was not pity and not charity and not the particular performance of kindness that made you feel smaller for having needed it. It was the look of a group of people who had watched someone do real work in a hard situation and were acknowledging it the way they acknowledged everything else straightforwardly without ceremony. "Tessa," Rafe said. She looked at him. He reached into the inside pocket of his vest and produced a single folded piece of paper. Set it on the desk in front of her. She opened it. It was a formal employment offer. Typed, Iron Meridian Auto Salvage letterhead. Position records and intake manager. Start date today. Salary that was more than she had made at the small company she had told Dutch she'd left for family circumstances, more than she'd made anywhere. And the number was not rounded. It was exact the number of someone who had done research and made a deliberate determination. She read it twice. "You wrote this before Klein arrived," she said. "Yesterday afternoon," Rafe said, "before you knew how this morning would go." "I knew how this morning would go," he said. She looked at him. "You were certain," she said. "I was certain about you," he said. "The rest follows from that." She looked at the offer letter, at the title, Records and Intake Manager. Her name on the line at the top, typed in already there. Not a question, not provisional. A statement about what was already true that simply needed her signature to make it formal. She thought about the motel room at $29 a night. She thought about the $38.16 that was now mostly gone. She thought about Raymond Cusk's envelope in her bag still unsealed, and the 14 days that had been ticking since yesterday morning, and the summary document time-stamped at 2 in the morning that was going to be the foundation of her response to Preston's motion. She thought about the note at the bottom of the banker's box. The woman in the office. Whoever sat in this chair in this room with access to these records, that person was a threat to someone. She picked up her pencil. She signed the offer letter. "There's one condition," she said, setting the pencil down. Rafe raised an eyebrow. "I reorganized the entire record system," she said. "Not just the filing cabinet and the tow records and the environmental logs, everything. Vendor contracts, weight certifications, compliance history, going back as far as your records exist. I built it correctly from the foundation so that nobody, not Saul, not Klein, not anyone can ever find a seam to push into again." Rafe looked at her. "How long will that take?" he said. 3 months, she said. "Maybe 4. And after that, she said, you'll have a record system that is accurate, organized, and completely invulnerable to external manipulation." She paused. "And you'll have someone who knows exactly how it works and can maintain it." "In the county investigation," he said. "I'll cooperate fully," she said. "Everything I have is documented. Klein doesn't need me to do anything except answer questions, which I will." She thought for a moment. "He may want me as a formal witness in the Saul proceeding." "Will that be a problem?" Rafe said. She thought about the note again. "Can't testify." "No," she said. "Testifying is what I'm good at." Dutch made the sound that almost became a laugh, and this time completed the journey. It came out short and genuine and completely characteristic of a man who produced warmth in small, precise quantities, rather than broad demonstrations. Rafe picked up the signed offer letter. "Monday you start on the full reorganization," he said. Today he looked at her. "You go open that envelope." He meant Preston's legal documents. She had been carrying them since yesterday morning sealed. She had made herself wait because she needed to handle one crisis at a time, and the Iron Meridian crisis had been first. Yes, she said. Do you need, he started. I have what I need, she said. The summary document, the time-stamped records, the gate documentation from yesterday. She paused. And I'm going to call an attorney, a real one. I know someone, Rafe said. She looked at him. Of course you do, she said. She handles civil cases, he said. Family law property disputes. She's worked with people from the yard before. She's very good, and she doesn't like men who use paperwork as weapons. Tessa thought about that for a moment, about the specific satisfaction of fighting paperwork as weapon with someone who understood the mechanism. Give me her number, she said. Rafe gave her the number. She went to the break room, sat down at the small table, took a breath, and opened Preston's envelope. She read it carefully. All of it, every page, every clause, every carefully worded allegation designed to establish legal ground under Preston's feet and remove it from hers. She read it the way she read records, looking for the seams, the inconsistencies, the places where the document's construction didn't quite match its surface presentation. She found 4. She wrote them down in her notebook, numbered them, made a note beside each one of the corresponding evidence she had that addressed it. The time-stamped summary document addressed 2 of them directly. The gate recording from yesterday addressed a third. It established that Preston had personally located her at her place of employment, which contradicted the motion's characterization of his contact attempts as reasonable and measured. The 4th required additional documentation she would need to request, but the request was straightforward. She sat back. She was not a lawyer. She had never claimed to be a lawyer. But she was a woman who understood documents, who understood them at the level of their construction, their logic, their internal consistency, and what Preston had built for all its surface professionalism had been built by a man who expected her to be too overwhelmed to look at it closely. She had never not looked at things closely. It was the one habit 6 years with Preston had never managed to break. She called the attorney, the one Rafe had recommended. The phone rang twice. Diane Marsh, said the voice. My name is Tessa Rowland, she said. Rafe called her at Iron Meridian, gave me your number. I have a contested separation motion and 14 days to respond. I've read the documents. I've identified 4 structural issues in the filing, and I have time-stamped documentation that contradicts the central characterization of the motion. She paused. I can't pay a retainer today, but I can show you what I have, and you can tell me if it's worth taking. A pause on the line. When can you come in? Marsh said. This afternoon, Tessa said. 2:30, Marsh said. I'll be there, Tessa said. She ended the call, sat for a moment. Then she took out her phone and opened Preston's most recent message, the one from this morning which she hadn't read yet. She read it now. I know you were at the yard this morning. I know Klein came. I know you think you've done something. But you haven't dealt with me, Tessa. That's still coming. She read it once. Then she photographed it, added it to the documentation folder, sent it to herself. Then she opened a blank message to Preston's number. She had never texted him since leaving. She had read his messages and not responded because responding gave him data about her state of mind, and data was something he used. Today she had something different to give him. She typed, I have 14 days, I'll use them. She sent it. Then she put her phone in her bag and went back to the scale office where the filing cabinet was fully organized and the digital system was correctly structured, and the records were for the first time in at least 14 months completely accurate. She sat down behind the desk. It was her desk now. Her name was on an offer letter signed in Rafe's vest pocket. Her systems were running on the yard's computers. Her documentation was in Klein's bag, on its way to a formal investigation that would spend months following the threads she had spent 3 days identifying. Dutch came in with coffee, set it next to her elbow. Marsh is good, he said. You know her too, she said. Everyone around here knows Marsh, he said. She's won cases that shouldn't have been winnable. He looked at her. You found 4 issues in the filing. In one record, she said. Then you're not losing, so, he said. She picked up the coffee. Outside, the yard had returned to full operation. All the sounds of a place that had been holding its breath for 4 days and was now breathing again. The hydraulic equipment, the engines, the metal, the voices of men at work, the specific rhythm of Iron Meridian going about its business in the way It had always gone about its business and would continue to go about its business because the thing that had been built to stop it had been taken apart piece by piece by a woman with a pencil and a review folder and the specific unbreakable habit of looking closely at everything. Rafe appeared in the doorway at noon. "Cody's going to take you to Marsh's office at 2, he said. "Yard vehicle. He'll wait." She looked up. "You don't have to do that," she said. "You're our records manager," he said. "Your 2:30 is yard business." She held his gaze. "It's my personal legal situation," she said. "Your personal legal situation involves a man who showed up at my gate yesterday morning using information fed to him by someone who tried to destroy this yard," Rafe said. "That makes it connected enough." He looked at her steadily. "Let Cody take you." She was quiet for a moment. "Okay," she said. "Good." He turned to go. "Rafe." He stopped, turned back. She didn't have a word for what she wanted to say, which was unusual. She generally had words for things. But what she was feeling was larger than what fit in the space of a normal sentence, and she was not the kind of person who said things she couldn't say correctly. So she said the true thing simply. "8 days ago, I had $38 and nowhere to go," she said. "I want you to know that I understand what that means, what this means." Rafe looked at her for a long moment. "You earned it," he said. "Every day of it." He left. She turned back to the desk, to the organized filing cabinet in the correctly structured digital system, and the empty banker's boxes stacked in the corner of the filing room, their contents now documented, analyzed, and submitted to a county investigation that would take months to complete and would at its end produce consequences for Garrett Saul that he had not anticipated when he sent Marcus to this yard with a plan. She picked up her pencil. She began the intake log for the day, the first one she was entering as records and intake manager in the system she had built in the format that was now correct and would remain correct because she would make sure of it. She wrote the date at the top. Her name in the manager field. She wrote it clearly, no hesitation. The way you wrote your name in a place where it belonged. Outside Iron Meridian ran. The metal moved and the engines turned, and the men who worked there did their work, and in the scale office at the center of it all, a woman who had arrived with $38.16 and a cracked phone screen and a message from a man who thought he owned her future sat behind her desk and built what came next line by line, record by record, document by document, because that was what she did, and she was very good at it, and nobody was ever going to take that from her again.